Carl Jung I resonated with because it was one of the first times I was reading literature or like psychology where it was like, this guy's presenting two variables. Like he's saying like, hey, if you look at this, history repeats over time, or you sort of have all these archetypes of Minos, which, and his sort of philosophy sort of set the foundation for the what's the test? The personality test.
Yeah.
Right? But it was, I would see how someone just said, hey, I have all this evidence. I sort of did these, and he would use math too, which I'm like, yo, this is dope. He's like, oh, I have all this evidence. Like, for example, he did a test. He said, like, I took 300 couples, I used their horoscopes and tried to see if it would be compatible based on a random location. And then like he used like calculations, and I'm reading the book. I'm like, I don't understand this. But it was the fact that at the end of it, he goes, hey, look at all this evidence. I can't say it's true, but you decide.
Hey guys, before we start, this is a quick reminder to check out Auxoro Premium, the best deal in premium podcasting. For $5 a month, you get bonus episodes spanning pop culture, love, science, politics, drugs, philosophy, sex, and more. You also gain access to the Unlicensed Therapy series, where I give my unexpert opinion on all things dating, sex, and relationships. Did I mention I'm unqualified? But it's also way cheaper than a real therapist, so you're welcome. On Auxoro Premium, you also get exclusive Ask Me Anything episodes, the ability to suggest topics for the podcast, and the entire back catalog of archived episodes. There's over 25 hours of premium content already posted, and it grows every month. Go to auxoro.supercast.com today. That's AUXORO.supercast.com to get all those benefits on Auxoro Premium for only $5 per month. auxoro.supercast.com to join the premium gang today. Now, on to the episode. The first thing I wanted to get into is you have an Instagram post where you were talking about losing yourself. You had a caption about feeling lost and exploring that darkness. I have it written out right here, but you were talking about going to a dark place. And so I wanted to start out reading that and then just get into it, and you can tell me what was leading up to that post and thought process and all the shit that goes into it.
Yeah.
We'll start with the darkness and then walk towards the light. That's, I'm not religious, but I believe in religious experiences. So hopefully we're about to have one on this podcast, and you too as the listener. So buckle up.
I'm more spiritual. So
buckle up. Praise Allah. Spirit, meditate. We'll get into it.
We ate it.
Yeah.
So I guess when you do that, but then we'll do like a sort of rewind. Like
do a rewind. Go how it started. So you wrote.
I'm going with your lead. Yeah.
You wrote about 2 years ago, I found myself lost, confused, and in a dark place. I began to embark on a journey of self-discovery, searching for my inner light and overcoming childhood traumas. The deeper I dug, the more I found. Initially on my trip to Kenya, I was looking forward to reestablishing connections, relaxing the mind, and creating art on the Art Love Tour. What I received is more than I could have ever asked for. Inner peace. So before we get into the latter part of the inner peace, I want to know for you, what was going on in your life when you were experiencing that darkness? What brought you to that dark place?
That's a good question. I think about 2 years ago, I think everyone in their adolescence comes to a point where they're sort of searching for themselves. And I think especially in the modern day era where I think as we grow up, we have like media gives us some sort of way that we should express our feelings, right? So I think at that time, when you reflect, if anyone who's been depressed or something like that, so, some people go to therapy, some people have people guide them in their way. I think I'm one of those people that like, I could deal with things myself, and then you reflect and you're like, yo, I was really down bad. A lot of my habits where I was lost in a way that, I'm consciously still doing my stuff. I think a lot of people were sort of proud, right? Everyone's like, hey, you're doing good, everything's going well in life, blah, blah, blah. But inside, a lot of my habits, I felt like I was searching for something, right?
Yeah.
Partying a lot, sort of just really being outside. And I would say that was the dark place, because when you sort of have to sit with yourself to a point, right? Like when you have or you have like a friend,
Yeah.
you know, a close friend come to you and tell you something like, yo, like you're crazy, but like you're sort of doing stuff out of like you're not what you did wasn't right or something, right?
Yeah, like not crazy in a good way, like crazy where your friend is sending you a text the next morning being like, yo, are you okay?
Yeah.
Or you have some sort of a friend intervention, which, you know, I've been a part of once for myself, and then there have been other times where I've had friends that I step in and I know they're not in the right mind space. They're doing something, whether it's a relationship or drugs or a combination of something, where I just know, even if they're not telling me what it is, there's something off about them. You can tell it's like a vibe that you get.
Yeah. I remember my cousin. We went to Avant Gardner, right? You know, in the summer when they have the whole sandcastle thing.
Yeah.
And he was younger. This is like my little bro. I always bring up. So he grew up with me when I was a child, as opposed to friends who sort of see me through my wild phases, right? Like you said, when you get that text, I sort of was the guy that would be like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. And just go about my life. But
yeah, you're just jealous. You're just jealous of how hard I go.
Exactly.
You can't drink 13 beers and then go work out the next morning. You're jealous of me, dude. I'm functioning.
Exactly. I remember I took my cousin. We go to this concert, and I remember I was like, he'd never really seen me in that like phase, right? Like I guess I was at the height of just like extreme partying, and I was just like we're at the thing, and I'm just sort of like doing my own thing, right? So, you know, once you get juiced up, you're sort of just like all over the place, especially in those kinds of environments. And I remember I met some chick at the concert, and I was sort of following around, and me being like my big bro to my cousin, like, you know, always sort of like a guardian, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like in the back of my head, no matter whatever happens, I'm sort of like always looking out for him. And I remember I leave with the chick. And this girl lived where, you know, it's down Bushwick. This girl was living uptown. I just just going about my way, right? And I get all the way halfway there. I'm sort of sitting in the car with this girl, and she was saying like something that was like hitting me in a certain way. And I started like saying stuff because I think there was things going on in the background with like family, and I like mentioned it, and she just gave me like this look, like, what's wrong? Something.
Yeah, she's like, I'm trying to get piped right now. Stop bringing up your personal with the pipe. I don't want to hear this stuff.
Yeah, just chill.
Yeah, just chill. She's like, I have shit too. Just keep it together until you get back to your place tomorrow morning when I kick you out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was one of those like, it's funny because it was one of those like, this is before I was really doing art. It was one of those like crazy art chicks. And I was like, ooh. I was like, maybe I should be into those. And then like, I think we're like 3/4 of the way there, and my cousin calls me like, yo, Arthur, where are you? I'm like, I snap out of it like, oh, fuck, yo, I gotta go, da-da-da-da. And, you know, I meet up with him, I get him back, and then we go back, he stays over the next night. And then he just leaves in the morning, and then he sends me like this long text like, I don't know what's going on with you, but what you were doing was just like out of whack. And I was just like, again, I sort of brushed it off. That was the time when I was really just brushing it off.
Was it just the going back with the girl, or was it partying, or what was it?
It's like, you know, like, it's almost like you're not there. When you're in that sort of phase, it's like, I guess that inception of depression, right? If that is your expression, which is like partying and going out, and that's how you're sort of running away from it, it's like, you're sort of just like, and I'm especially when I'm out, I'm like a all over the place kind of dude. And it was just like, dude, you're all over the place. In the beginning, you're with me. And then the whole night, you're just like, you're not around me.
Yeah.
You're not there. You're just, I was just going wherever whatever was buzzing.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I've been that guy too. And it's hard to, not that I'm ashamed of it or there's anything wrong with it, but I've been in phases where I have a planned boys' night. Like we're going out. I'm going out with the boys. Like we 5, 6 of us, and
we going hard,
and we're gonna go hard. But this is a bonding experience. This is a religious experience. We're going. I went to school in Richmond, Virginia. So we're going to Southern Railway, that bar down there. We're getting fucked up, and we're gonna hang out. We're gonna talk, and we're gonna shoot the shit. And at the end of the night, if we want to go our separate ways, of course, go back with the chick or that girlfriend, whoever you're feeling when the lights come on at 1:30 a.m. And I've been in phases where I get to the bar. Yeah, that's early for Richmond. It closes down at 2 in Richmond. Yeah, so 4:30 a.m. if you're in the city, and hopefully it gets back to that. But I've been in places where I get into the bar and I completely abandon my friends on a night when we're supposed to be getting fucked up and have a good time, but then it's like this glittering prize in the side of my eye where I think I need to ditch all 5 of my friends that I've known for 10 years to go talk to this girl that may not even want to talk to me, and then 3 hours fly by and I've just been hopping around trying to get pussy so badly, and then I haven't even talked to my friends. And sometimes I'd go home empty-handed, sometimes I go home with someone, but either way, the next morning on those nights I wake up and be like, what the fuck am I doing? It's not the sex, it's the lack of it's the lack of bonding with my friends on a night that was supposed to be where we're gonna get together, and I feel like I wasted my energy.
Exact. I'm notorious. That's okay. We go out with Arthur. He's gonna disappear for a couple hours and then show up randomly at the time when whatever, or he's not gonna come back. So I really relate to that, sympathize with that. That was definitely that's definitely sort of who I was. I couldn't really stay put. And that bonding experience, part of it would be I feel like I'm born naturally with a lot of energy. And then some of the friend group, it would be man, they're not getting as hype as me. I'm so excited to see them. They're not. So let me sort of put on maybe a show. When I'm around people, especially in those bonding experiences, I really like it to be we're in our own world, or I'm doing the antics to make us enjoy more or laugh or whatever. So when I would feel man, they're not the other person across the bar or the girl across the bar is appreciating that energy a little bit more. So I'm going, you're saying,
she's
glitter.
About it. Why are you guys not about it?
Why are y'all just y'all ain't pregame as hard? Y'all ain't you got in pregame for 5 hours like me. Why ain't y'all not excited to see me? Right? So I definitely sympathize with that.
So what did you change? Because you mentioned habits before. What did you do to get to a place where you felt like you were more centered in those social experience, more centered when you go out, where you didn't feel like you were being pulled away from your friends as much, or just pulled away from where you felt like you needed to be? What did you change in your own life that allowed you to get to that place?
I would say that part I still go through at times. I think I've definitely lowered. I was drinking maybe 5 times, 6 times out of the week.
Yeah.
I was really more of an experience chaser, always out. I think to change habits, it first started with asking questions to people about just anything. I guess
people that you admired in some way, or
it would be my neighbor.
Yeah.
This French dude worked in the bakery. We would always have some small rapport. And then one day I just asked him a question about life. He tells me all these things about, I just started I would say not necessarily inspire, but maybe I would say people who were older than me that I saw were different. And I would just ask them questions in terms of what did you do? Or whatever. And then I think the one thing that really changed me, I think me sort of growing up being more visual and scattery with a lot of energy, I got a notebook. So I got a notebook, this journal. I remember the first time I got it because I was sort of I didn't necessarily have the what was the passion, but I sort of was like, I think I need to organize my life a little bit better, aside from just work, this, and especially I think the work had the duality. The work I was doing wasn't fitting me exactly, so I was having this like Jekyll and Hyde. So that's where the party, I started to like.
And you said you were working in money, right? And
In finance, in the government, which very, go to work. You're sort of, I don't want to say uptight, buttoned up,
professional. There's you can't. I mean,
and you don't curse. So it's not in a government type of environment. It's very, you don't curse versus like your typical banking type of job.
So it's not like Wolf of Wall Street vibes. You can't do that in government.
No.
Government money is different than Wall Street money.
Yeah. So that definitely was like I would feel like uptight all day. And I would have to release this energy. And I sort of saw that and I was like, how do I integrate these two people? Like these different lives, right? And the first step was I think getting a notebook, because someone at my job actually told me, just like get a notebook, organize what you want to do in life, blah, blah. And I remember just sitting there.
And how old were you at the time? The phase when
24 into 25.
Okay. And how old are you now?
27.
27, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like 4 or 5 years ago, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So, you come out of school, you party, you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You always just, your habits are really just, I am partying, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
You're learning how to put on the adult facade convincingly when you get out of college, because you're still drinking. But when you can black out every night in college and then still be a college student, you have to take those habits and hopefully adjust your drinking a little bit. But it's hard to do that right out of college where you're just like, I'm going to stop all those college habits. But adults, it's not even that adults are more adults. Adults are just better at putting on the mask of adulthood during the 9 to 5. You know what I mean? That's what I've always felt like. Some people, like, part of being an adult is putting on that exterior where people recognize you as an adult. Yeah. And you can still be a freak outside of the office. And I have an office job, and I have friends that work office jobs that are the craziest fucks outside of the office, but in the office you would never know because they're so good at socializing and talking to people and being professional. And so that was the thing that I struggled with getting out of college, is that 6 months to a year gap when you're 22, you're still wanting to party, but you're also in the workforce, and so you need to have a better, almost like a dam wall in between, where you put on the wall during the day and then the gates open up at Thursday night, Friday night, and you can let that your energy out, your party energy out. But the good adults to me were the ones who they didn't suppress their, I guess freakish energy would be a word for it, or just party energy.
Yeah.
They were just better at compartmentalizing it.
Yeah, and I would say for me it was a little different because I was working in an office environment since my freshman year of college. So this professionalism front, or I was always the youngest guy, right? So I was always the youngest guy in the office. So once I was even 22, I was somewhat a little more mature, right? And the people I was hanging around with. And then when I went into a government, the workforce in government, there's a huge age gap, right? So most of my peers are 15 years older than me. There's only a few people coming in that were my age. So even more so, to assimilate in that workforce or your environment, it was like, especially in a bureaucratic type of environment, I was like carrying myself, in that sense, right? So it was like, for me, it was like especially the analogy that you're saying, but it was like a hollow sense, right? Like I would have all the knowledge and I would be able to act that way, but there was still like this catching up of just life experience had to catch up with me. So it would be like mentally 22, I felt like I was a 27-year-old because of when you go to work, especially in that environment, most of them are not talking about sports. They're talking about their families. They're talking about things, investments, blah, blah, blah. So as to assimilate to that, and then, I have my normal friends too. But then I was able to balance that a little bit. But then, like I was saying, it was almost like I had this shell. And then I was of whatever age I would say that I was slightly older than what my actual age is. Most people assume that too. But there was still
you would lie about your age at your job?
No, actually, so the type of work I was doing, I would go to the banks and imagine, 22 to 23, 24-year-old going to like a CFO, a CEO, and sort of telling them this is right?
Yeah.
The one thing they would always teach us is like, don't reveal your age. And that's something I always learned. And usually when I was that age too, a lot of women would come to me at the bar, right? That are older, right? Like 30, even 35, 20. So I would always have this like, all right, I would always like maneuver through that until it came to the question. Obviously, I would get some wins, and then it would be like, sometimes when you get that experience, it catches you up, right?
Yeah.
You catch up, you close the gap a little bit, but then there's still like, when you reveal your age, there's an age bias, right? So even if I was more mature, there was still an age bias towards me. And then at the same time, there was still a lot of things I needed to mature, a lot of other areas. So even though in what the front I was talking about that I was mature, I felt like I was mature.
That's interesting, because when I think about being dishonest about your age, the first thing that comes to mind is women lying about their age to be younger. But if you're in a job like you were in, where you're closing deals with people that are much older than you for a shit ton of money, it's good that you seem older than you actually are, because if they find out you're 23, 24, maybe
we're paying guys this much.
Yeah, your youth could make them question their own decision-making ability of getting into this deal, because there is that age bias of experience. And so, yeah, like, what would you say if you were about to close a deal and the guy said, by the way, I'm going to sign on the dotted line. How old are you, though? Would you just be like, old enough to close this deal, and just fucking drop the pen on the table and be like, don't worry about it, bitch? I'm old enough to close this deal, motherfucker. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I'd always say some slick shit. I'd always say some like, no one really like forces it out of you, right?
Yeah.
You realize only really like only a woman would really do that. But in a professional environment, I was always able to sort of, because I would even younger, I used to read a lot of books on like body language and stuff like that. So I really studied like human. So it would just be like, like close the deal, or this is it. All right, no questions asked. No one would really come to you like, how old are you, son?
Yeah, in that voice too. They'd be like, how old are you? Tell me. They'd be talking like this the entire deal, and then at the end they'd be like, by the way, how old are you, son?
Because I always carried myself.
Yeah. Older than
yeah. Unless maybe I was in the party environment, but even so, even when I was underage, I was sort of hanging out in the city, doing a lot of these, going to bars, sort of. Yeah. So
do you feel like, because your art is amazing.
Thank you.
It's it's abstract expressionism, I believe you would call it on Instagram. I don't know the exact words, because
I don't describe.
It's abstract. There's a lot of lines and colors, and it evokes emotions. Even though it doesn't look like the goal, obviously, of what you do is not to paint a 1-for-1. So take an exact image of this and then turn it into an exact image on the canvas. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to evoke an emotion through your own style. And do you feel like your early affinity for body language, or the way you were paying attention to body language from an early age, because you said you would notice that, you kind of read books about body language, study people's language, or pick up on that. Do you feel like that led to you eventually becoming an artist, or added to the art that you currently do now, because you're picking up on movements, and art is so visual, and you have to be able to evoke an emotion, and that's what people's body language does. You could say the same thing 10 different ways if you move your body 10 different ways and inflect and do all these things. Do you feel like there's a connection between the perception of body language and the art that you eventually started doing?
I would say, yeah, that plays a role. It definitely plays a role in it. I think I sort of had this creative ability since I was a child. I didn't know what I would actually create when I was younger. So I think as I was in this dark place and I started going on this journey, I think, like I said earlier, I was more of a visual person. So that was how my voice was able to express the best way. I was sort of like quirky, goofy kid. So I would say like these things and it wouldn't connect as far as communication, words. I wasn't a writer, so I couldn't really like put sentences together that well until I started working in corporate. So when images really sort of give a view of me, right? I think this intense person, somewhat particular, but still within the lines, right? In terms of like still contained emotion, right? I would describe myself. Let me ask you a question.
Shoot.
And this will give you sort of a view of sort of my art, and it's sort of part of me too. If you were to be a terrestrial or extraterrestrial type of thing, anything in the world, universe, what would you be? I say I'm a volcano.
So if I had the ability to be anything on the planet, man, thing, animal,
to describe yourself.
Oh, to describe myself. If I could even be an alien. That's tough. That's a tough question.
Like a sand dune. Yeah, it's like sand dune, waterfall, asteroid. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it would be something that has a rather stable emotional level. People tell me that I'm usually pretty on a calm wave most of the time, and then I do explode and get angry, but those moments are pretty rare for me, which people will tell me, oh, it's a great thing that you're so calm all the time, but sometimes it's a negative, because there are times where the calmness is bubbling up and I don't let it out, and I'm better about that now. But when I was a teenager, even in my early 20s, I would just bottle it all down and go party or go have a random hookup, go focus on baseball, because my whole life was baseball at the time in college, and then I would never let that needle get on the 9-10 end of the spectrum. Like when we had this recorder right in front of us. If you've ever recorded a podcast out there, or seen the dial, when you get up to a certain point, it's like it goes red and it's just like and like right now it just like you see it beeping, and I would never let myself get to the red end of the spectrum. So if I were to be something or someone or an animal, object, whatever, it would be, I feel like
you give me volcano energy.
Volcano is not a bad one, because they're dormant most of the time, and then they cause destruction when they're active. But I cause more destruction to myself when I explode. So maybe an internal volcano, like a volcano. When it does release, I wanna help people. So maybe I release, I don't know, fucking like lube or money or like something.
Lube.
Yeah, just like fucking like free condoms, like fucking spouting out $100 bills. And then occasionally when I explode, I just fucking shoot lava down into my own asshole, and it bubbles up into my body. Yeah. Like a volcano that tries to be free and do what I like and help some people out, and then occasionally I fucking explode on myself and shit my pants on Taco Bell. That's a good one. Volcano's a good one.
Yeah. So just like you were saying, I'm the same type of way, and I sort of made it a little schmazzy, a little bit more, it's not as bad, but like, you look at a volcano, which I'm fascinated at times. I would just sometimes like animals and watch nature. But if you look at volcano, right? I've hiked one before. If you've ever hiked one, it's like this smoother than like going up a mountain, right? Very smooth, serene, right? When it's dormant. So very calm, it's very peaceful.
A lot of ash, a lot of there's no trees or anything like that. Or?
Yeah. Not many trees,
Yeah.
right? So you're sort of going up and it's
Kind of like you're walking through an outside cave, like a cave that's outside.
Yeah. And then, you got the inner core, which is very intense energy. And it doesn't, it's not like something like a geyser that's always shooting up. It's sort of like, it builds up over time. When a volcano, right, erupts and the lava comes down, it destroys everything in its path, right? But in the sense, especially if you sort of look into like Hawaiians, they really appreciate the power, right? Because it's almost like a very powerful structure that when it destroys everything, there's this video where the volcano destroyed everything, but what it did, it created newer it actually re-fertilized the land and allowed for new crops to grow. But what happens to lava, right? So when lava goes, whatever it goes into water. And what happens when it hits the water?
It solidifies, right?
Exactly. And it builds up into mountains, right? So I always felt like this, like you were saying, this very stable, the emotions are sort of all inside. Either it implodes on itself or, God forbid, if it really erupts, which I never really have those, like you're saying, very rarely. But then at the same time, as it has that explosion, it recreates and builds up on top of each other, right?
Yeah, it's like a short-term destruction, especially if there's a volcano around a high population, but then bringer of life long-term.
Yeah.
Because then the volcanic lava will turn into ash and then eventually could fertilize the soil, creates islands. Like you said, Hawaii brings, people couldn't go on dope vacations like places in Hawaii if there were no such thing as volcanoes. And so, yeah, it's like if you were to make a volcano a person, it would be a natural, something that stays on an even level for a long time. And then there's a natural disruption from pressure, or natural eruption from pressure. Something moves and builds up like a tectonic plate. Maybe it's outside your control. Maybe you're not causing it. Maybe something else is causing it. Pressures of life, spiritual pressures, emotional pressures. And then you explode and the people around you may perceive that as negative. And sometimes it is, but maybe you went off at your friend, like your friends went off at you. Maybe you tell your friend something that's really hard to hear and they perceive that as destruction. Dude, why are you trying to destroy me? Why are you tearing me down? But then 5 years later, you're sitting with your friend and he or she apologizes and is like, hey, that rant where you put me in my place 5 years ago, I really needed to hear that. So you didn't, you shot down my ego in the short term, but then they were able to build it back up. So I feel like a volcano is a really good allegory for ego, whether it's someone else or yourself, where you have to destroy yourself and destroy your ego and bring it back down. And then a new life comes up from the places that you destroyed.
And to build on top of that, another view of it would be like, I would say passion. So some people would confuse anger with passion, right? They're very closely correlated. And I would say I'm nihilistic, but I can seem really passionate about things.
I'm going to take some notes like a therapist. So when you mention things, so I remember to come back to it. But yeah,
it all relates back to how the art, how it brings out itself. But yeah, the I would say like in Iceland, right? Iceland, there is a volcano that erupted, separate from like the Hawaiian ones that, you see destroy everything. It was like almost contained when it erupted. And then everyone started traveling to it. And you knew from afar, when you look at lava, it's like beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It's breathtaking, but it's sensitive a little bit. So you can't come too close because it's hot. So I know that I'm a passionate person, but with that, I think even the volcano analogy would bring some sense of sensitivity. I'm sensitive to my environment. I definitely could admit that, like, my awareness, even though it's a really big, I think it's one of my good attributes, awareness also comes with like sensitivity in the same realm, right?
Yeah. Passion oftentimes is confused with anger, and
Hate that.
Kanye West gets like that a little bit, where he'll speak about something so passionately that if you just heard the 30 seconds of him ranting on energy or building a church or changing a system of music and distribution and how we pay artists, whatever it is, if you just hear that clip, you might think, oh, this is an angry fucking dude. But he's like talking, so his mouth is wide open. He's looking, he's fiery. He's like, yeah, he cares about it. And that can be perceived sometimes as anger rather than, no, I'm at the dial of 10. I'm at 9 or 10, but it's coming from a place of virality and growth. It's not coming from a place of anger. Maybe it's even a little bit angry, but it's coming from a place of, you know, why did I not think about this sooner or something? It's not, I want to destroy everyone around me. I feel Kanye sometimes
misinterpreted.
He definitely says some wild shit. Like, I love Kanye West. He's a musical genius, and outside of music, I take what he says with a grain of salt, but he definitely has some ideas that push you to think and cause you to push the boundaries. And he speaks so passionately. He gets so in flow where sometimes it's hard to tell. Like, are you angry? Are you fired up? Are you, you know, is it just your passion that's showing in the moment? So I've definitely been that way before, where I am listening to someone who is very passionate, but then I think that they're angry, and then I feel bad about it. I'm like, oh, this dude was just he's just passionate about this topic.
Especially since I've been on this journey, Kanye is a very good example that you said that prior, maybe a couple years back, I definitely would see the same thing, the passion, but I'd be like, why would he say it like this? Why would he communicate it like this? Why is he not calm? Right? And then now that I would say that another part of me is that being sensitive to my environment didn't always let me say, you know, let the lava out. You know, because I knew it would be sometimes hot.
Yeah.
It'd be hot for people they can't understand. They think you're this way, especially over the last like year, as I sort of evolved into that, like sort of saying, this is who I am. This is whatever. I don't care. I sort of see it in Kanye, like, yo, I get it. I totally get it. Like, they don't understand you. They don't see you're an unorthodox thinker. You're saying, of course, a lot of the stuff he does say is very like left, right. You're like, what? But at the same time, like you're saying, there's this consistency of passion. Like, you can see that he's a creative, he's unorthodox, yes, but he's passionate about what he does. And you have to respect. I think a big thing that people lack is respect of perspectives.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously, it's how you articulate yourself. It's probably one of the most important things. And that goes back to my art, where sometimes I would say funny things as a joke, and sometimes people take it serious. And I think the art gives a good view of how I want to say something.
Yeah.
You know, or how I want to voice this view. You get a view of how I think sometimes, or what's going on in my head, and the message sort of relates, right? Like, you're this really happy. And then if you know me, it's like you're this really like happy-go-lucky dude, but a lot of the art you make is intense and sort of scary. So like, it's like when people sort of start to piece it together, even myself, it's like, oh, okay, I sort of get what you're trying to say. Not get what you're trying to say, but like, okay. Yeah. I don't get it. Maybe I don't get you exactly, but I'm not going to have a judgment of you. I'm going to respect you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's so a connection between the way that Kanye talks about certain topics and the way that you make art. Now that we're talking about it, I do see a connection. Kanye is the type of person that would talk with the same passion and loudness, and you could hear just the energy in his voice. He would use that same level, whether he was talking about building a network of churches across the world or adopting a butterfly. Like Kanye he would be like, yo, I'm going to adopt a butterfly and it's going to change the world about the way people think of butterflies. They're so left behind and all this shit. And so when you, as an artist, you put that same level of energy behind painting something around the concept of an orange or like banana cream or a concept like isolation, like something so deep and then something that people normally wouldn't think of as deep, like a painting that's supposed to represent oranges. And then you put out something that's like, this is the depth of my soul. But they both have, I don't want to speak for you, but like to me, they both are, they seem like you're approaching them with the same level of energy and passion of, I want this painting to say something.
Yeah. So my style is like I said, I see sort of the world through images. And sometimes when you're in a world or a society with words that describe, right? You have pictures and images that go. I mean, images with words that describe things. The way I view the world is a lot through dreams and like these random images just come into my head. So when I'm painting, I don't have like a reference. It's like this image that will basically come into my head. I don't really know what it is, but it just feels like I have to let it out. And then, like you're saying, I approach it like an arrow, right? Like when you throw an arrow, you know, it's very discreet and to the point. It's very pinpointed at where it wants to go. So in the sense that maybe not I want to bring out an emotion, but it's this image will be stuck in my head. And the way that I want to portray it is, I wouldn't want to say it to the point, but it's like the energy within me, right? The image or the energy within me. I want it to be like.
So the image appears in your head first. Do you ever see something that prompts you to think of an image, or does it usually come from internal? Like you're just walking through the park and you think about a tree and that image of a tree, even if you didn't see the tree first, you'll start to notice trees in different ways around you. Does it usually come from your head first? Do you see other things do you see things externally and then bring them internally? Is it just internal to external, or is it a combination?
For me, it feels like my subconscious is bringing me these images, right?
Like planting seeds almost.
Yeah. It's like I've always felt like I've always recognized my subconscious is smarter than my conscious realm in some way. Instinct, right? And I guess when it comes to creating now, it's almost like these planes meet. So I live life, you know, pretty much walk around, do whatever, talk to people, and that's a good question. I think like this, like I said, it's almost like a dream, right? Like it's like That's So Raven, like she sees a vision, like randomly something happens, like, right? Like I have this painting called the Hot Tamale.
Yeah.
Red image, very intense. I remember it was just like summer and I was sitting there, but it was like this time where I was alone. I was really alone. And it was almost like I wanted to throw up, not even throw up, like literally, but like feeling really hot. I was feeling really hot. And it was like, what's this energy? What's this thing? So I feel like it's the subconscious like putting these things, and that's why people resonate with it. That's why the energy's in it, because it's not like, I feel like it's higher than me versus than me always trying to portray something. Yeah. It's like image comes to my head. There's always images playing in my head, but like one image will be like, ooh, I want to do that.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask you about that. We're just gonna pause real quick. I'm gonna check the camera because it looks like
it started spazzing.
Back from a technical difficulty / bathroom break. So before the podcast, you sent me a few stories and prompts over DM that we're gonna get into, and I didn't ask you anything about them. So this is the first time I'm gonna hear anything about that list. And one of the things that you sent me is a Miami show spooky story.
Yeah.
So what is that about? Tell the people what went down.
So I would say when I started painting around that dark place, right, 2 years ago, it was more self-therapy than sort of like friends, sort of people who knew me in the last 10 years when I wasn't painting, because after high school I didn't paint really for almost 10 years. They were like, yo, you can paint, yo, you should like show it, right? So I started, I guess, thinking in that mind frame. I did a couple show, like maybe 1 or 2 shows, like Soho or something. And then I had this opportunity to do a Miami show. I meet this guy in a gallery. He's like, yo, I'm doing this show in Miami, in Wynwood. I'm like, yeah, dope. Why not, right? So
Wynwood is where they have all the artwork on the buildings, right? Graffiti art.
Yeah. And it sort of fits my style, right? A lot of colors and stuff. So I would say, so that point was when people started to recognize me in a different light, perception wise. So from like, oh, you're just doing art and you're the guy who parties and you do finance, to like, oh, like you're like, do you work or like, you're a professional artist, like you're really an artist. So I had a friend who's, I started to meet art people too. So that sort of built, you build your network and you get into the show. So I guess I would say the painting is the first part, right? So leading into me going into Miami, right? So this painting, have you ever seen a woman that's tall, like really tall, but then they have long legs?
Yes.
And
like Amazonian warrior, something like that, like an Amazonian woman.
But like a woman who's really tall with long legs, they have like an awkward walk, right? Sort of like when they wear heels too. It's like this. Like,
because then they're like 7'2" also. Yeah, and they got the long legs.
It's like this awkward. So I live in Greenpoint, Williamsburg, and I saw this European woman. I used to date a lot of European women. So
I'm dating one right now from France. Yeah,
Liddy.
Hinge. Hit up Hinge. So put it on put your radius. She was actually in New Haven when I met her, so not far away. But set your radius on 3,000 miles, and you'll meet someone across the pond.
Great advice. Advice. I'm gonna do that. So not that I was infatuated, but I usually would date European women, or we would get along better.
It's a different vibe. Different vibe than American women.
Value system is slightly different.
Yeah.
So for me, it made sense, right? Women are still women, whatever, right? But it's slightly different, and you sort of look at them, and it's sort of like the oohs and ahs when you have something different, right? But I saw this woman, and I was like, my eyes sort of just like. So I think there's some paintings that are really inspired by just like an image, but then some are like click, click, click. Like you were saying, I look at a tree, or I saw a woman, I was like, let me just paint this and sort of whatever. I want to do this. So I started doing it, whatever. And I remember I went into a coffee shop, and I was just sitting in the coffee shop. And this
just bring the mic a little bit closer.
Closer.
There you go. Yeah, you're good.
And some girl comes and sits next to me randomly, right? European chick. And she just start vibing. Da, 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 da. We were like connecting really well. And then like I go back home. I think I'm maybe like 90% done with this painting, right?
Yeah. So she came to sit next to you in the coffee shop.
Yeah, and she was having a bad day or something, and I'm like a happy go like, ah.
And this is COVID times. So she had to want to sit next to you in a post-COVID world, to sit next to someone else at a coffee shop. You're either,
I mean, I am a 6'2". Come on,
yeah,
like,
you're crazy, or you're horny, or you're both. One of the two.
Facts.
Yeah. So
and this is when the world
was feeling it.
So like maybe like May, June, when the world sort of opened up to a little bit.
Okay.
So the flurries was happening. So I went back home. I'm like 90% done with the painting, and I get spooked. I'm like, yo, did I just paint this person without meeting them? Right? Initially, I thought it was the European, but The girl had green eyes, sort of like blonde, short hair.
And this is Closure. You're talking about the
Yeah,
Closure.
yeah. So I'm like a little spooked, but this is before Miami show, right?
Yeah.
So
can you describe the painting? And I'm gonna link it to the podcast, whether you guys are watching this on the YouTube or Spotify, or wherever, there'll be links. So for Closure, can you just describe it? Give a brief overview of what people are looking at in this painting.
You have like this blonde-haired image, right, woman, and I sort of the long leg aspect I was talking about. This is when I started just messing around with like glow in the dark paint. So I was like, I want to draw this, or paint the face, but the one thing that I actually wanted was like the glow in the dark, like body, the skeletal structure, right, overlaying it. Not that I thought I even looked, it was just like I want to do that.
It's like it's wavy too. The background almost matches the waves of her hair. Her hair is blonde, but the background is also in a similar style.
So, but the one part I really wanted, if I guess you scroll through it, look through the painting, the next part, it's like, oh, there's like this glow in the dark, blue light. So it's like, oh, okay. So you see the face, but then this is the real or whatever, right?
So you painted the pink part with glow in the dark paint?
Yeah, blue light.
Yeah. So if you guys check this out, I'm gonna put the link in the description, and make sure you flip through the Instagram photo. Go through the banner, and you'll see a video where the pink part of the painting, which looks like this person that's sitting inside the blonde woman's head, almost like maybe a part of them, but not really, but someone that's in her life. You'll see that red pink person actually lights up when the lights are off. It's fluorescent paint. It's a really cool effect.
And so I get into the show. Things simultaneously happen. I'm starting to realize like I'm on this path where things are just like the doors are just opening up, especially just because I'm speaking to my truth, or just like following this path. And I get into the show. I'm excited. I'm like, yo, I got to stand out. So I'm gonna get a onesie. I'm gonna get this onesie for the show. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna make business cards. That's when I was like, I need a website. I need business cards. I need to go out there, promote. So that's when I started to take it, like, I would say serious, like from like serious to more like I'm a professional. Like I do this, right?
This Miami show was the birth of your professionality.
Yeah. Where it's like, I do this. Yeah. Like
May, June 2021.
Yeah, May, June. Yeah, okay. Last year, May, June. Yeah. So we go down there, I'm staying at a friend's crib. And at the same time, this is sort of when I came up with this idea that like, all right, usually, right, I went to Miami actually earlier that year and went to party. And like, this is when I started to change in action as opposed to like thinking about changing. So I remember going down there, this is one of my party homies, and I was like, yo, you let me stay in the crib, I'll do a painting for you while I'm there. So I posted that one too, which people like.
That's a good trade.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes my friends just leave me throw up in the toilet, or I leave it for them. But getting a painting for a weekend is a good trade.
Yeah. And usually when I visit friends, it's all about partying. It's never about So it was different, and I remember just during the show, it was really like, as I'm taking this more professional, it's like all the other artists were going partying, and I was sort of like, I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna go back to the crib and chill, just have do this painting. I'm more focused. And the idea behind that too was like, oh, what if I just travel? I have friends all over the country. I travel around the country, do a painting for them. They can pay me or not, but like, it also is another way to promote myself that, hey, I'm doing things everywhere, right? And also it's like showing people my skill, like, all right, some paintings take over time, but like, look what I do in like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Whoop, 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 whoop. And then you're sitting there while I'm doing it, right? And you sort of see my process, and it's sort of showing my friends that, yo, I'm different, right? Like,
yeah. How long did Closure take you?
I would say maybe over like a 2-3 week period.
Okay.
I have a layering type of process, so it's not like I sit there in 4 hours and go. It's
Yeah.
sort of like it evolves.
I've seen you paint live in the club too, or you put videos on Instagram of you doing it in a short period of time. So you'll have paintings like Closure where it'll be a 2-3 week process, but then you'll also have ones where they'll just come out of you in a shorter period of time, like a couple days or less.
Yeah, and that's really to show people my skill. Like, yo, I'm versatile. Like, you know, I'm not just take to the. I'm like, look how or maybe it's and it's a test for me too. Like, oh, I love pressure. So it gives this competition against myself. So I'm in Miami, you know, I don't really want to party. My homie's sort of like, and you know how Miami's like, it's different from even up here. If you try to do clubbing, it's like my homie in Miami, he wants to like get the tables. So he's like,
you can't go to the club in Miami and not get bottle service.
But it's like, it's like, and my boy's like, yo, we got like 5-6 heads. It's going to be 10 racks. And I'm just like, bruh, like, I'm not even here for that. I'm more focused on this. It was the first time I was sort of like not wired to like just relax. It was more like, I have something I'm doing here. So I don't really want to spend my money that way.
Yeah, when you go to Miami, I've never gotten bottle service in Miami, but I've gotten bottle service in the city where it's the same situation where maybe you plan it with 12 people and you know it's going to be 500 or 600 each, and then 3 or 4 people don't show up. And you wake up and you see the notifications in your Chase app and you know exactly the charges that are sitting there, but you're like, I'm going to not open my bank account for about a week until I'm emotionally
ready,
stable enough to handle these charges. And it's like, yeah, they should have payment plans at the club. They look at you and they're like, listen, we see your shoes. We know this is going to hurt. Would you like to pay this off over 3 to 6 months?
That's hilarious.
You can pay $45 a month for this bottle of Grey Goose if you like. We're not judging you. And I'd be like, you know what?
Sign me up.
100%.
But you know, Miami is even different from here, where Miami's like, you got dudes throwing $100K in the same thing. So it's like, you only spending $10K on the table is like, you're on your little boy shit. Versus like everyone in there is like, you know, it's like uber wealth. It's like not real. So I sort of was like, I'm not here for that. So, you know, I go through the things and I'm hanging out with my boy Renda, who's sort of like a street artist. And he does a lot of murals there. He's well known. And he sort of helped me sort of change my mindset, right? We were similar. And he, you know, we're sort of just like tagging up Miami, doing whatever. He's taking me around, sort of. So I'm like, this is fun as fuck, actually. And so we get to the show. There was like some politics. It's like a really popular, well-known gallery in Wynwood, but most of the artists were from New York. So it was like a learning curve for me too, of like choosing what shows I do. So there was like this like first, and I'm a huge Nets fan. So they were playing the Bucks at this time last year. And you know how that went. But
how did it go? I have to admit, I don't follow the NBA. It's been a while.
Here's like the chronological part of the story, right? So it's maybe like the last day or so. I'm doing all these things to promote, and then the show sort of like, I don't want to say it was flat. It was definitely like you have this expectation in your head when you put in all this work that this comes out of it, that everyone comes, and then it wasn't. It was like, okay, I learned a lot, but the show was okay, right? So this is Game 7. Right, Game 7. I'm on. This is the last day of the show, and I'm watching it on my phone. Like, yo, I gotta go to a bar. I gotta go see this. Yo, like, I got to go see my team.
100%.
I go to the bar. You know, the Game 7 was like the crazy, like back and forth. It went OT. You know, KD hits the shot. I'm screaming. I'm such a passionate Nets fan. I grew up in Jersey, so you know, there's like 4 Nets fans in actuality that aren't like, you know, like.
You've been waiting for this moment for a while. It's building up.
Biggest moment ever for the team history, right? And I'm in the bar, I'm screaming, and it's one of those things like you've ever seen it in a sports bar where, you know, you're so passionate about a team or someone else that everyone starts rooting with you or against you.
Yeah, you see the guy and you know he needs this. You get behind him even though you're fucking. You're from LA, but this dude's rooting for the Capitals. And you're
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
fuck it. I'm throwing 300 on Washington right now. Saddle up. You go buy a jersey across the street. Come back. See, it's some homeless guy on the street. You give him $20 for his Capitals jersey. You come back in. You're just like, we're riding right now.
And it's like a poppin' night in Wynwood, Saturday night, poppin'. And I just remember like everyone either against me or with me, they lose. So when we go back to the volcano analogy, that's watching Nets basketball is the only time I will actually erupt if they lose, right? Like I remember like I would put a hole in the wall, break something. And in this moment, I was so exhausted from the show and stuff that it was just like this somber attitude, like, like, right? And so my friend's around the corner and he's like, yo, I'm here at this restaurant or whatever, like come meet me over here. And I had the flight in the morning. Like 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was like, finally, after doing all the work, it's like finally for my time to relax, right? The last 2 hours I can actually like drink, enjoy. I'm walking down the street. Some homeless dude asked me for something. I sort of say whatever. And it was one of the few times I don't think really ever like a homeless dude ever like approached me, because I'm usually like able to handle a conversation well enough to like, yo, man, he's like coming at me. He's like, yo, and it's like creating a scene. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what kind of luck am I having or whatever, right? So I'm moping.
He's a Bucks fan. He's just like, fuck you, dude. Yeah. Suck my dick.
Yeah. So it's, I go up to one of the clubs where my friend's at. And one of those places where it's like a whole rooftop, or like, let's say your friends say, meet me here. They say, hey, meet me here. And it's like people are sitting at tables and you sort of have to like really look, because it's like people are sitting. So I'm scaling this place about like 75% of it. I'm like, all right, my boy's going to be around this side, adjacent to this side. I'm walking, and guess who I bump into?
Miami coffee shop girl.
No, my ex-girlfriend.
Oh, shit.
My ex-girlfriend from like, I think 3 years prior, right? Who, European, blonde hair, bluish green eyes.
Wow.
So I'm like, and I'm not like a stumbler. I'm sort of like, if I'm walking past someone, I slide through, but I walked into her like, she's like, and we never talked, we never really traveled. We never really talked about traveling to or anything. It was like, and it's not like spring break or anything. I'm like, what are you doing here? She's like, oh, I came here for my friends. And she asked me like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, I'm here for our show.
Yeah.
Then it was like this awkward interaction, like, okay, I'm going, right? And then she's just going. I don't know. It was like, and then I sit down with my boy like, yo, and she ends up, I think, leaving or something like within. She was making me feel like, so when someone tries to make you feel like awkward,
yeah,
especially that kind of interaction, I'm sort of just trying to be like, oh, hey, what's up?
Yeah, like you run into someone completely random and they try to act like you've been planning it for weeks. You're just like, oh yeah, you knew I was gonna be at this club. You and they're still the ones that's tracking your location. So you're like, bitch, you set this up. I didn't.
Yeah. So I didn't feel I was just not in a shock, but I was just like, oh, whatever. And then I see her end up leaving. So then it was like, whatever happens. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm like, my boy lives in Brickell, like SLS, like 40th floor. SLS is like the brand name type of apartment, hotel thing. So he lives like a high floor. So it was like beautiful view on the balcony. I remember it's like 4 o'clock before I'm leaving, roll up a J. I look out the window. It's like this beautiful view, and a tear just like drops out of nowhere. I'm not like a really emotional dude. I'm like, it was like this shock of like, yo, that painting is your ex. And that's the closure, because you didn't feel the emotion when you bumped in. You didn't feel like this. Usually I think a part of even me being depressed was going through that breakup, that post-breakup phase. And then you don't fix yourself after it.
Yeah.
And that was like, that was like when I guess released. It was like, this was true closure, and it put the pocket in the book, and I was like, yo, this is crazy. This
So
is dope.
so you painted your ex before you ran into her randomly without even realizing it.
While thinking it's someone else.
The coffee shop girl was before Miami, before everything. So you thought, oh, I just painted this coffee shop girl, something weird going on in the universe. We connected through creativity, something like that.
But then it brought it a step further. Like, this is not a game. This is sort of...
Could it be both? Could it be like the old and the new in one? Or did it just feel, when that moment hit you and you had a tear rolling down your face, did you know it was your ex in that moment?
Yeah.
It was her?
It was like, there's certain things that just like... It just clicked.
Yeah.
How do you run into that person in that moment, in that specific place, in a random place in Miami? It's not like, you're sort of like, okay, this is really, I'm not thinking it. And then it just hit like, yo, this is sort of freaky. I look at myself in the mirror in the bathroom. I remember I was just like, what the hell? Yeah. Right?
Yeah. No, I get that. I get the creative closure and the creative release of a romantic partner that's outside of conversation. So a lot of people feel like closure has to be a face-to-face meeting where she says her piece, I say my piece, and then boom, you meet conversationally, and then you split, and then that's the closure.
Yeah.
But I've never... I'm not good enough to do that with a painting, but I've done that with writing letters. I've never felt like I could get closure with a conversation, but I have written out my thoughts, and a lot of my friends will tell me it's a bad idea. I've even thought it's a bad idea because for some reason writing to a lot of people seems like more vulnerability, but to me, speaking has always made me feel more vulnerable. Writing, I didn't do it to try to be deep in any way or profess my love for someone by writing this letter. It was more of it was more a function of practicality where I can better express myself writing out something beforehand, and then I'll read this to you because I'm gonna fuck it up if I don't read exactly what I write. And so I have had conversations with girls that it has not worked out. And I didn't feel like I had closure until I wrote it down on paper. And sometimes I would read it to them. Sometimes I would just keep it to myself and say, I just got to get this out. I'm going to type this out, write it out, whatever, put this in a drawer. She's never going to see it, but I just need it for the closure. And so your experience makes me think of my own closure with other partners in my life, where I had the conversation. Either I told her this, this is not for me, this isn't going to work out, or she tells me, I just don't see this going anywhere. And I never felt closure in that moment. But then, maybe 3 months later, I write something out because it's nagging me and I didn't even realize it. And I'm getting anxious and the pressure's building up in the volcano. And I think it's my job or just regular anxiety or whatever. And I don't even think about the relationship that ended 3 months ago. Because I want to think, especially as a guy, you break up with someone, fuck bitches, get money. Yeah. 2 weeks is your cap to your friend. You could be dating a girl for 10 years and break up with her, and your guy friends will be like, dude, it's been a week. You're still thinking about this girl? And it's like, yeah, facts. Dude, I started dating her in 2004.
Facts.
They're like, dude, you got 2 weeks to get over this. But I felt, and even podcasting a little bit too, I felt like there's that first moment of closure that I get from writing. And then years later, I talk about an ex on a podcast with someone else or a solo podcast, just the experience, getting it out. And the relationship is done. Maybe I'm in a new relationship at the time of the recording. And it's like a next level of, yes, the relationship was over, but now I'm at a point where I can express myself objectively and observe the emotion and not be captive by it. But I can look at this like the relationship is outside of me. It had a life of its own, and I'm recording something about that experience. And it's almost like I'm talking about another guy that dated this girl, because, and really we are, and you are, and I am. You're literally a different person physically and emotionally. You go through changes. So that always made more sense to me, to get closure through creativity rather than to have the cliche rom-com conversation of, you know, she's in your apartment and he leaves and crying. Yeah.
It's over now.
It's
Over now.
and then it leaves and that's supposed to be your closure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The key that you said, and I think it's something that a lot of people go on this journey, and what people need to learn is being vulnerable. And being vulnerable allows for acceptance, right? So you said using the creative outlet. Even me, in that sense, I realized on the journey when I changed, it was me asking questions. It's just being more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. In the same thing, going through a breakup or going through those kinds of experiences, you have to be vulnerable to have acceptance. Like, yo, this is reality. I'm not living in this fictitious, like, oh, maybe this, or dealing with my emotions, right?
Yeah.
Like the volcano goes back to the volcano analogy. All the emotions are in here, but you're not really dealing with it as much. It's just building on top of each other. And then all these random things that are bothering you come.
Yeah.
And you don't really even know the source versus like, I think now what I do, okay, find a way to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
As quick as possible to have some sense of acceptance.
Yeah. Speaking of vulnerability and relationships, so I have a question to ask you about a post on Reddit that blew up. This painting went pretty viral on Reddit, and I want to get this right. So it's a cave painting from 2000 BC in Algeria.
What?
And I'm gonna link this to the description as well. And it's basically a cave painting etched where this guy's railing out a woman from behind in doggy style, and it's very stick figure-ish, but also shaped and curved a little bit. And if you're looking at the painting, you'll have a better visual. But I wanted to ask you, because sexual imagery and pornographic imagery is so black and white and politicized today, where people will either say porn is terrible for you and it's destroying your habits and creativity and having all these effects on you that you don't even realize, which may be true. And then there's also people that are on the opposite end of the spectrum where they say, you know, there's absolutely no problems with porn. It's free expression, creativity. And I think it depends personally where you lie in the spectrum. When I saw this painting, this is before, you know, the westernized system of politics we have today by 4,000 years. And it was some dude or some girl in a cave that either saw someone having sex or had sex herself and then was like, that's pretty cool. I'm going to put this on a cave. And I imagine that same person seeing a waterfall and saying, that's pretty cool. I'm going to put this on a cave. And there's this very casual feeling to it where the person's just painting sex like they would paint a microphone or a bottle of whiskey or a scaffolding outside a building. I'm just looking at shit that's around me right now. There's no, I'm gonna be erotic and controversial. It's just, I'm just painting this thing that happens in life. Do you feel like how do you feel about sexual imagery when it comes into art, even if you don't paint particularly sexual things yourself, but when you see other artists painting things that have to do with sex or pornographic imagery, do you have any feelings that are associated with that as an artist? Because I'm interested to see your view, like purely from an artistic standpoint, when you see images of sex or that's supposed to be representing sex, how does that make you feel from a creative, artistic perspective when you're looking at it? I feel like as an artist, you can almost remove yourself from the average person view, like myself, and sees a sexual image and you automatically think of the horniness of it. But as an artist, you're probably seeing this and you're looking at the lines and the shapes and the background and the contrast. Do you have any particular feelings towards sex as it's depicted, where like, I don't know, what pops into your mind when you
taboo.
Taboo?
Yeah, I think one part of me coming back into art was I was seeing a lot of bullshit out there.
Mm.
And it's not, how do I say this? It's not how it's being expressed and what's being expressed. It was like, oh, I'm gonna show how, and that's a good example. Like, oh, I'm gonna show a man and a woman, and I'm going to depict the sexual fragility of some whatever. It's like, okay, it's almost like, you know, sex sells, but in terms of a creative, it's a very fine line. It's a very fine line and again, me being an artist, maybe not necessarily because it's the audience that usually picks, well, this is what's profound, right? I'm a big believer in that humans, we have this kind of like code, and it relates to art, that we see something and it's like profound and it's like you can't explain it, but like we just know it relates to our code, right? So especially, and sex is the highest form of energy. It's the most, I think, where most emotion, it's the highest form of energy. So when I see, especially modern art, I mean, for me, I always want to meet the artists, and then I don't want to say them walk me through.
Yeah, we could dig this guy up. I mean, he might be mummified.
But this is exactly how you sort of, I view it the same way, in terms of it's not this overly sexualized image. It's almost like this.
It's just a thing that
it's
happened
just like
that
a
day.
thing that happened that it's
like this. Like if this image zoomed out, it would be next to a image of him picking a basket of fruit or something, and going to sleep in his bed. It's just, today I woke up, I went for a walk, I railed this bitch out from behind, and then I picked some fruit. And this is just a part of life. I've always been drawn to the art, and I think that's why I was drawn to your art when I saw it on Instagram, and it stood out to me because, like I told you before, there's so many artists on Instagram, and when you search hashtag art or New York City art on it, you get bombarded. And then I literally stopped and went through your profile and was,
wow, thank you,
staring at it for a while, and just looking at the art and thinking about it. And part of what drew me to it was that I felt, if there was any profound feeling that I got from the art, it wasn't because you were trying to create profundity. You weren't trying to,
exactly.
You weren't trying to, you didn't get in front of the canvas and say, I'm going to be deep about this topic. I'm going to paint an orange, but it's actually a representation of white male fragility. When you look at it,
exactly.
It's just, this is what it is. It's a thing that happens, and this is how I see it. This is my creative representation to it. And that's what drew me to it. And I wanted to bring up this painting because I get a similar type of vibe where this person just drew a thing that happened, and it's really cool to look at. But there's no, I imagine if I asked whoever painted it, he or she might say, yeah, like it's we fucked, and we did it doggy style that day.
Yeah,
if we were missionary, I would have did it missionary.
Ass.
Yeah,
she had a fatty.
She had a fat ass. Dude, she does. Like you could see the thighs.
She got the donka.
She got that donka. You could even see the boobs a little bit hanging down.
He said, I gotta go over.
Yeah, dude, he's like starting to reach around to the boobs where he's about to hang on to that shit. Yeah. But yeah, I feel like I've never been drawn to art that seems like it's trying to be deep. When an art makes me question an idea that I've had, and I realize, oh, maybe this idea is wrong, or it makes me question something about my own life, a personal experience, that making me do that through almost a pedestrian everyday experiences, like depictions of things that happen in a basic way. To me, that's and the I don't know if approachability is the right word, but just the things that I get from an everyday experience that leads to me feeling like I'm reaching a deeper level, and it causes me to question it causes me to feel like this is something profound. I've always liked that, but I don't like art that comes off as trying to be profound, if that makes sense. Like,
which is a majority what I would see, which is a lot of the stuff I would see. Not to say or disrespect artists, but and especially when you meet them too, they would exactly what you. Oh, I was trying to depict, and I just look at the painting, and there's not something that. Besides the fact that I would just be like, oh, where exactly what you're saying, it's like, for some reason, that simple image right there is so profound.
Yeah.
There's just so much, but in the same way, it's so simplistic, right? It seems like you just let it go, right? Which that's where I mentioned like the subconscious element of the way I create. The only thing I do is try to be an arrow, right?
Yeah.
I just try to be to the point, intense, all that energy, make it come in a very, I don't just have intense energy and just splatter it, right?
Yeah.
You have artists who, oh, I feel this energy.
Yeah.
That's how I see people express it. But then for me, it's like, keep that energy within this plane, right? So exactly what you're saying is, I would say, part of the intention and my approach and part of the process. It's not like I know what I'm doing. It's not like I'm just, of course, of times there's this point where I channel it. That's the arrow where I give just the analogy of the painting for Miami, where I was like, I saw something, it clicked, and I did it the same way like that caveman dude, like probably saw two people getting it in and was just like let me just sketch it on the cave. So that's definitely, I really appreciate those words, because that speaks to like my integrity, right? It speaks to sort of like how I felt and how I was like, nah, like y'all on some like boo boo whatever.
Yeah, and there definitely benefits to diving into profound meanings of things. I don't mean that nothing has a deeper meaning, but I don't think the way to get there is to try to be profound as a creator and then project that onto your audience. The things that have made me think the most deeply, whether it's a film or a painting or a book, is something that's written from the dirty shit of life. This is the shit I do every day, and I know it, and I write about it, and I'm not necessarily trying to be deep. I'm just writing about shit I know, or I'm making something I know, and then people then take that and they run with it, and they say, oh, this seems like you're saying that all relationships, the most important love is the love we have for ourselves, and you might be like, oh, I was just painting a stick of butter, but it's great that you got that feeling from it, because it's yours now. I put that painting or podcast or movie, I released it into the world, and it's yours in a way now. You can perceive it however you want. You're applying your own filter to it, and I've always felt like the approachability and the dirtiness of the everyday shit of, I know this, I feel this, I taste it, I touch it, and now I'm gonna make something based off of that, speaks more loudly and more powerfully than I'm gonna, this light represents the darkness that we all feel inside, and like maybe it does, but just paint the light. Like I don't want to say like just like I'm telling people how to do it, but like for me,
let go a little bit.
Yeah, just write about the light. Do a podcast about the light. Make something about the light. Don't try to impart the deepness. Put it in the onto box. People. Yeah.
Let's put it in the box.
Yeah, basically. Limitation makes a lot. It gives a lot to people. That counterintuitively, when you put limits on yourself, it can make things even stronger. Because when you try to make everything so boundless and you try to do everything with just one piece of art, it can destroy it in a way, because you haven't really focused on the thing that makes it that thing.
Definitely, and definitely to the mantra or the approach of being able to let go, but still being able to. That's why I said arrow, and then even that's when I explain the subconscious to conscious plane. It's like I'm not really controlling it, but I'm taking a piece of that interpretation and obviously putting it onto something, right? So
you mentioned that psychology influences the style and energy of your art.
That helped me be able to interpret it.
Okay.
So I would say the first couple, when I would paint, and especially like when I first started doing drawings, paintings, at first I was copying the image and I was like, this is sort of boring. Like, this is too easy. Then I started to get really imaginative and just start creating my characters. And I kept that sort of like colorful, childish imagination throughout the years. When I started really reading into like Carl Jung, who Carl Jung, really good, not like what are these other guys? Freud. I'm not really into those guys. I resonated
Freud
with
and like
Freud
philosophers.
Nietzsche. It was like a confused dude. He was sort of just like, yeah, I don't care about life, but it doesn't matter.
He thought the epicenter of every emotion we have is our desire to bang our moms, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like, bruh, like,
it's like, maybe you just wanted to bang your mom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Carl Jung, I resonated with because it was one of the first times I was reading literature or like psychology where it was like, this guy's presenting two variables. Like, he's saying like, hey, if you look at this, history repeats over time, or you sort of have all these archetypes of minos, which, you know, and his sort of philosophy sort of set the foundation for the what's the test? The personality test.
Yeah.
Right? But I would see how someone just said, hey, I have all this evidence. I sort of did these, and he would use math too, which I'm like, yo, this is dope. He's like, oh, I have all this evidence. Like, for example, he did a test. He said, like, I took 300 couples. I used their horoscopes and tried to see if it would be compatible based on a random location. And then he used like calculations. And I'm reading the book. I'm like, I don't understand this. But it was the fact that at the end of it, he goes, hey, look at all this evidence. I can't say it's true, but you decide, right? Like, look at all this evidence. He has something on like fairy tales, right? Like how fairy tales sort of relate to, or more so archetypes, right? He would talk through these archetypes and I would see like, yo, how did this guy have my archetype? Which was like someone who's really intuitive, but is sort of scared to experience. Like basically he's like, well, those kinds of people you should experience. You should try to like push yourself more to experience more. And I read that and I was like, man, this dude is like in the 40s. It's like writing through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. And I was like, man, this is so profound. And that's when I started to learn about myself. And when I started to really learn about myself, then when it was creating, post-creation, not pre-creation.
And this is Carl Jung.
Yeah.
Reading about the archetypes and personality traits and things like that.
It was like a way for me to really understand how to look inside myself, right? And a lot of the sayings, he says a lot of that. Like, if you don't know yourself, he was, the way he wrote, I could really understand it in the voice. And when I started, I think this was like the part of the journey, but then I was able to put words to things I was seeing and the way that I would see things versus the visuals. And then when I would look at some of the paintings, I would be like, why would I use this color versus this color? Because even color schemes, I don't always pre-select what color I want to use. And for certain ones that maybe, but, and I was like, oh, these relate, these sort of got me into like Buddhist like philosophies. Then it got me into sort of like chakras and these kinds of things, right? But not in the bubbly way like a girl who's like a hipster. It would be like, I'm more on the like mathematical or like very like scientifical front. So I really appreciated that he took the spiritual realm or these things that we can't see and grasp and sort of tried to articulate it in a very mathematical, scientifical way, right?
Carl, I know who Carl Jung is, but I'm not familiar with a lot of his work. So he's someone that, like you said, took spiritual experiences or feelings that people had and then would try to explain them through psychology or
He would like the experiment that I said. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Like the horoscope thing. Like, okay, horoscope. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This dude did an experiment where he's taking couples in a select area, and then he's sort of using probability and calculative equations. A very hard book to understand. It would be like 80 pages, and I'm like, I have to sit down and reread each page.
So he's matchmaking through psychology and archetypes, basically.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I feel like the horoscopes they're too broad. A lot of times I'll see people post online of, I'm a Pisces and my horoscope says that today I'm going to see someone who makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
And then it happens and they post about it and they're like, see, I told you, I met this person and he made me feel really happy. And therefore that furthers my beliefs in horoscope. Or it's like, today I'm going to wake up. And I'm just like, well, how do you know anything based on the horoscope if it's so general? But he's giving archetypes that are specific enough. Carl Jung is that it's not like it didn't seem shady to you. It's archetypes that actually were encompassing specific types of people. It wasn't so broad where anyone could experience it, because sometimes I feel like that's why I see astrology as a hoax, because it's too broad to where anyone can fit into any description. But Carl Jung was using things that
calculating,
calculate the specific,
and then it would be like, not that it's 100% fact proof, but it was like, this is the first time I'm seeing two ideas when I sit back and I think like, maybe it's this based on my instinct, that he's trying to explain it and trying to use history or he took this, he had this book, right? And it was about the book of Job, which is a book in the Bible. And I'm not really someone that's super religious, but he writes about how this story in the Bible is about faith. And he starts going on more analogies about society, right? He starts saying things like, society's not going to do nothing for you. It's this, and he says even things like, Western, you got because he's around the time like World War II, World War I. So he's like, you got the Western side, and they try to make you believe that the Iron Curtain, communism on the other side is something completely different, when it's actually the same exact thing, right? And it's like, me especially working in government, I was like, I get it. It makes sense. This guy's putting words to ideas that you feel like are true, like are somewhat Illuminati, but he's using calculations in history. He's actually someone who's looking back in history from ancient times, using multiple examples, right? He would study people who have dreams, and it would be these symbols, right? And that goes back to almost like human code, right? He would say something like, this guy had a dream about this, and da-da-da-da-da. And he was this age, and he was going through this in life. And I would just write his dreams down over time. When you start, when you have a sample and you start getting it over time, you can see a picture, right? And he would sort of like, this symbol meant this, because then I saw it in another patient that I had, the same exact sort of imagery. So it was just like things I really resonated with, that like you're searching on the side of the unknown, because psychology is the newest science of all the sciences, right? So it's like you're sort of searching on the unknown, and the things that people, even in modern day now, like horoscopes, that people sort of see as like, all right, either I really believe in it and don't know, or I think it's bullshit. It's like he's sort of trying to provide, he tried to, or attempted to, like, hey, I can't explain it. It's not like it's fact, but I'm trying to dig deep and put a picture around it.
So he's using these real world patterns and collecting data
exactly
to give people some sort of outlook on things we may perceive as spiritual or supernatural. He's trying to collect data on that, whether or not it may be it may be 100% true. He's at least attempting to do some sort of experiment on it where you can look at it and gain something from it.
And my favorite part is he would always have these facts, but aside from people who are like Nietzsche or Fraud, who like definitively say after they do their experiments, like, this is this.
Yeah.
Carl Jung would sort of be like, well, I can't say it's the truth, but
take it for yourself.
Yeah, take it for yourself.
Dude, that's rare, especially in today's world, living in a post-pandemic world where everyone has their opinions, whether they're qualified to have the opinions or not. And they're so set in their ways where this is what I think about COVID or this is what I think about vaccines, or like yes or no, fuck the vaccine, whatever. And people are not willing to change and they're not willing to
sit back.
They're not willing to have their minds changed by data, not even change their mind, but just have the possibility of their minds being changed once a person, for example, you could take vaccine mandates. There are a lot of people that have been vaccinated like myself who are also against some sort of like a state where everyone is required to have certain medical decisions made for them, like people being forced to get a vaccine or any sort of medical treatment. But I believe anyone should have the option to do it should they choose. And I've been on both sides of the fence because I'm trying to look at what qualified people are saying about COVID and vaccines, and I'm trying not to get sucked into the headline debates on that you see in the mainstream media, and then you just take the headline and you let that determine your opinion for the next 3 to 6 months. And someone asks you, oh, how did you formulate that opinion? And I've done it myself where you're like, I don't really know. I read this headline and now I've just been telling people that that's true without actually looking into it. And it's something that I try to work on and something that I admire in other people, especially people who are super fucking smart, much smarter than me intellectually. And they are willing to say, here's the data, here's what we know. And I say, okay, so you're saying we should do this? And they say, well, we don't know yet. We don't know, and we're working on it. And I love that answer because that person is giving me the data. They're saying this is what we know so far. Make your own informed decision. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but here is everything that we have, and we're being transparent. And we live in a world of opinion. Even in podcasting, when something comes out, you need an opinion on it. You need to say, this is my take. I read the headline. I'm going to have an opinion on this and I need to get it out because in 2 weeks, no one's going to care about this. And the keywords aren't going to pop up in the video on YouTube anymore. I need to get it out right fucking now. And so Carl Jung, the way that you're talking about his work, I wish more people had his mindset and his approach where he's doing a really what seems like a really good fucking job collecting the data, and then he releases it without an activist approach. He's a scientist or a psychologist, not an activist. This is what I know, but this is not how I need you to think. You are free to think however this data moves you to think.
Absolutely. I'm sort of that school of thought, especially when I read a lot of his teachings, and also being a person who worked in the government, I think, and I don't want to go overly deep in my views, but I'll almost like how society views things, right? The government, right? What's the government? What does everyone think the government's supposed to help us, when we have to, not help us. Of course you do things for yourself, but they're going to come and help us, right? But where are the problems coming from? Who creates these problems, right?
The government.
Outside of your life, right? I mean, obviously there are society problems, right? But, medicine, you got plants. Plants have been used, right? But you have an industry with money, pharma, right? The government goes, well, man, for our society, for our government to survive, right? Our businesses have to do well. Not lobbyism, but like, you see where I'm getting at, where it's like this they create problems, they solve them, or they don't, or they make you think that we are. And what society, especially government entities, there's no face. That's something that you're taught. This is something that I think I learned even when I read Carl Jung. There's no one individual. They make you think that, oh, president or representative, these faces that they're in a government, there's no face.
So that's something they teach you when you work in a government job is that you like almost a lack of accountability. If someone has a problem with a certain issue, there's no one person you can take down and blame.
Well, think about it like this. Every government agency has a mission, and they fulfill that mission. Like you're saying, they fulfill that mission. Federal Reserve. We protect monetary policy. You know, my friends who traders, why doesn't the Fed raise rates? The Fed has one objective. That's an example. This is what they'll do. This branch of the government has one objective. This is what they will carry out. It's not something that they're trying to amend. And then, beside the fact of just having a mission, something that you get taught is, because then when I was working in government, I wanted to go deeper to like FBI and some of these agencies, right? But
what agency were you working for when you were in the government? Federal Reserve,
which is quasi. So it's like you're sort of like financy, but you're also like, I have really sensitive information, essentially. So I can't really like, and that affected my personality because I sort of had to lay low with everything. So, but it's sort of like you can't really, not that you can't have a face, but you're supposed to be laying low, and you have sensitive information that no one can really have, right? So understanding that, and me, when I joined that and the questioning and whatever I went through, the clearance, you have to go through a clearance. So I was like, man, I sort of want to go to the next level because I'm a very intellectually curious person. Like, I want to find out what people don't, I sort of see the programs and the patterns, and I'm like, this is not difficult to see through. So I want to see what the person who's creating these things or how these things are being pushed out. What's the information that we're not able to see in the everyday because they're having a different mindset perspective than us, right? So everyone's like, I mean, now with a lot of information and everything out, everyone's like, oh my God, look at these government officials. They're making all this money. They don't really care about us. Like, oh, they fun, through the pandemic and other examples through life. I mean, our generation is, but for me, I was like, man, I got to figure out what. But then at the same time, you lose individualism because everything you do, you're supposed to do is for them, right? So I remember when I early joined, they say something like, we come first, something comes second. I can't remember, like country or your family, something. You come third, right? Almost like I think.
So government first above all.
Or whatever, our
whatever
agency,
the objective,
our agency
Reserve,
first, whatever, and then, which is basically almost like I forget. Someone was saying like this is like Catholic school teaching, like when you go to or a religious school, sort of when you go into religion, similar type of mind methodologies, essentially. So I sort of saw that, and me, I'm like, of course I'm in it. I want to be the person to help, right? And through my experience, I was able to have this experience where I was able to interpret like, all right, this should maybe be the answer, but they're picking this. Huh? Oh, at the end of the day, it's people. So no, it's people interacting with each other. So there's some sort of relationship. I'm not going to go, I don't want to say lobbyism. I don't want to get into that because I worked for the place. It's a place I respect. It gave me a lot of things, and I don't want to go too deep into that. But it's like I would see things, and then it would resonate with me, and I would be like, something's not making sense. And then I would have my own experiences where it's like, why am I not winning? I'm not winning here. I'm not nothing. It just seems like I'm not winning. And someone told me, like, I remember when I was at a certain point, and this is everything sort of happening at once when I was getting to this low point, and that's when I was working in the government. And I was like, the person was like, bruh, why do you think this is going to change? Or it's like this, it's this, and they're doing that. And I was like, Oh, right. So you get this understanding that the way society and governments depict things over here, and everything's the middle. Like, especially now, it's like you're on this side or on that side. When in reality, they're so close to each other. But still, what society, more so I would say society, government does, it's a nature. There's still this line that they create in between these two things, right? So for example, let's take two emotions. Happy, sad. You're really happy. You know, so are you happy with your life?
Yeah. The infomercial. Yeah, it's like, are you happy? Are you really happy though?
Are you happy then you're sad. Are you really sad? When we know as humans, we have all these emotions that we go through. So you're not in one set precedent.
People happy cry. That's the thing that people do. They're so happy that they cry, and then they're sad and crying, and they start laughing. So they're much closer than you think.
Those were some of the themes I saw that Carl Jung would bring out.
Yeah,
and then especially through day-to-day experience, I would start to and then of course Buddhist philosophies, Eastern philosophies help me like yin and yang. Like you can't have this without this type thing.
Yeah. So I grew up like a lot of people with a naive view of the government where it's this entity that's out for your best interest. And of course they would never do anything wrong. It's the government. It's the United States of America. We're the best country in the world. And the government of this country is going to protect us at all costs. And, you know, I pay taxes. So technically they work for me and they're going to do the things that benefit me. And then I started learning about things like something that happened in both of our lifetimes is the 2008 crash where the government bailed out all the banks and then all of these small businesses and people lost their entire life savings because of the mortgage crisis. And that made me step back and think like, the government protecting corporations, the government protecting their own self-interest over the interest of the average person, that doesn't seem like this government that I grew up with. Almost like your bubble being popped the more you learn.
They don't care about you.
The government gets inflated. And then the second thing, there have been a lot of things, but the most recent thing on my mind about, you think the government is out to give you a better life? You think the government is out to make you happier and richer? I don't know if you saw this, but there's an article on Business Insider that didn't get a lot of traction, but 182 members of Congress, I believe it was 182 members of Congress violated the Stock Trade Act, which means that you're not allowed to trade on insider information. And you have all of they're the first ones to know which laws are probably going to be passed, which laws aren't going to be passed. Are we going to be more stringent on social media that affects companies like Facebook and Twitter? So they have all this knowledge before things actually go into play, and that can make you hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. And not only did 182 million people violate the Stock Trade Act, which meant that either they personally traded on inside information or someone in their immediate family did. So they basically, I don't know exactly what happened, but if you're someone in Congress, you could tell your wife, hey, I'm not allowed to say, but you should put more money in Facebook. And your wife makes money. Your wife makes money. You make money. And part of the article is that I found out that most of these things have an ethical internal committee. So people in Congress are not prosecuted for insider trading in the same way that the average citizen would be, or some guy on Wall Street. They have an internal ethics committee that most of the time does nothing and other times gives them a $4,000 fine, something like that. It was insane. Like you could make $500K on a single trade and your fine will be $4,000. So of course you would fucking do it. And then reporters are questioning people in Congress like Nancy Pelosi and Dan Crenshaw
like
and
30 what?
Yeah, and
we're crazy.
Man. She's worth millions and millions of dollars, making $200K a year, and I'm like, how something doesn't add up, and people ask Congress members about it, and they're like, we it's a free market, and we should be allowed to trade just like you. And I'm thinking, you're not trading just like me. which laws are going to pass and which aren't. You're on the inside. That's the definition of inside information. And there have been so many things like that with money. And I'm bringing that up because you worked for the Federal Reserve, and I'm thinking about the way that my bubble has been popped with the government looking out for our best financial interests. Stories like that, like the crash and the violating the Stock Trade Act, made me take a step back and realize government doesn't give a shit about how much money I have or don't have, as long as I'm paying taxes on it. They'll come after me if I don't pay my taxes, but I need to look out for my own best interest, whether it's in taking care of my own investment strategy or investing in crypto, whatever it is. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a shit about the average person. They will do whatever they need to do to fill their own pockets and do what's technically legal to keep the country running.
Yeah. I wanted to allude to basically lobbyism goes on. And not that I can point out, but I would be like, oh, these two people have a relationship. It's people.
Yeah.
Relationships.
Yeah. You're human. They're human too.
Human.
Like,
They're not this special thing.
And I'm not saying I'm no better than people in Congress. If I was in Congress and I had the opportunity to trade on something where I know nothing's going to happen to me, I could literally make this trade tomorrow and I'm going to get fined $4,000 or whatever it is at the most, and I'm not going to be prosecuted like a citizen. Why the fuck not? Who has the willpower to not do that, especially when you're protected by the government? And to go off the lobbyism, one of the things that people keeps coming up is people will look at the vaccines, which are great technology. I myself am vaccinated, but these companies market. Pfizer markets, Moderna markets, and you look at
who gave them money.
You look at mainstream media and they're saying, you should go get the Pfizer vaccine. You should go get blah, blah, blah. And then there's a commercial break and it says brought to you by Pfizer. And you're just like, MSNBC is telling me to get the vaccine, but then Pfizer also gave them $10 million to run their ad. How am I supposed to believe that you're being objective when you're getting paid by all these companies? And I don't know what the solution is. I don't, because people run ads, companies pay money, and they want to see their products sold. And then these corporations want to take that money and promote these products, whether it's in best case scenario, your beliefs align with the products that you're pushing. But a lot of times you may not know anything about it, but they're giving you a paycheck and you just spout off whatever they're saying. So I don't know. The lobbyism thing is weird to me. It's just like how I suspect
it's people.
It's people doing people shit.
Yeah. If I'm your homeboy, for example, and it's like, let's say we're in a room of 30 people and it's not even about money. Let's just say it's something as simple as like, yo, Jay-Z's gonna come or something. Like, you got the inside. Yo, like, if we stand by this door over here, we'll get a picture with him, right? Like, you're my homie. Same thing in every other thing. Like, the one thing I learned was, number one, it was like, each government agency has its own corporate interests. They don't care about you. If you die, it's whatever. We don't care. Then to the second point, it's people. Like I just gave that analogy, like people. There's nothing that different. You can put on a suit, you can put on whatever, but people will help. Like people based on relationships will help each other in any type of form of way, right? That when I understood that, and then you mentioned sort of solution, the one thing was I just sort of like turned off the TV and I almost like trained I would say it's like training. You have to sort of like train yourself to, when you see information, because we all see, it's not like it's something that we don't see. It's everybody sees it, but you don't, I guess, give yourself a lesson to like, yo, I gotta like like you said, that article got no views, but everyone knows that this is what everyone's talking about on Twitter. It's sort of like you have to change your life to sort of, I don't want to say hide yourself in a corner, whatever, but live within society, because you know that's sort of what gives you your individualism and a lot of the things that you benefit from. But at the same time, weed the bullshit out. And when you know bullshit, your ears just instantly turn off, and they don't get excited every time you're hearing the same thing again. Like
if you had to be specific about the bullshit that you saw on the inside of the Federal Reserve, is there something that stands out to you as the biggest bullshit that you learned is bullshit that the average person is unaware of? If you get into a specific
I don't think I could speak. Obviously, based on the things I signed, I don't think I could get on maybe a specific situation, but I would speak,
or maybe just something that happens regularly, but not naming people or specific, maybe not a specific instance, but just a regular occurrence in people's lives that people may take as, this is just the way things are because we live in a democratic society, but because you've worked in the Federal Reserve, you know exactly why that's happening, and there's some sort of manipulation going on behind the scenes financially.
I wouldn't say nothing specific to that. I would say it's more generic to how people interact. So I had a mentor who said something, and it was so profound when he told me this. It's like, he told me like, yeah, like in corporate or any job, it's like 70% of the time they're going to pick the wrong thing. He told me that, like, yeah, and like everything, like work or whatever, when it comes to decisions, 70% of the time people are mostly going to pick the wrong thing. The right things aren't always going to be picked. So I don't think there's something that I don't think there's something that I know more, especially working there, that when I was working there, that was like, yo, this is more than the average person that I would know. I mean, it would only be the sensitive information that I have. Yeah. That's just more like financial. But, I wasn't even allowed to trade when I worked there.
Really? You weren't allowed to do any
you could
sort
trade,
of
but
stocks or
you
ETFs,
could, but
like
it was like you have to go through a lot of hurdles. You basically have to you go through a lot of hurdles, right? You had to get a lot of clearance to do these kinds of things. So that would be the only thing as far as sensitive information. But a lot of the themes that I mentioned that you can see almost everywhere, because when I even if I posed the question to someone when I was working there, just a question like you just said, it would be like, it's everywhere. It's not different. Because a lot of people I was working with were MDs, everything, working in different entities everywhere. So they were just like, nah, like there's nothing really more unique. Again, my clearance, it's not like I was in the FBI, but even I've spoke to people who work in the FBI. It's like, it's not it's not like FBI is the FBI. You still have like a financial analyst there. You still have this here. You still have very generic. So people have a lot of glitz and glam over it. It does have its perks in terms of information that you get that's sensitive, but there's people way higher above you that you don't see that are really making these decisions, which are the people in the Senate that are, or the people who are the Federal Reserve Board that are really making these decisions that you don't have a view into. Yeah. So
the 70% thing that you brought up is a good point, because
it's crazy. It hit me crazy. I was like, what?
It's so true. In anything that you do, you're gonna fuck up, or pick a percentage of the time,
or pick the wrong thing,
make the wrong decision. You have 4 options and you pick one, and it's the one right next to it, and you're like, fuck. But it seems like the government goes that extra step to cover up the tracks of making the wrong decision, or making you feel like it was the right one and you're the one who's stupid for thinking that it was wrong. We always make the government makes the right decision, and where it seems like the government's, a lot of what the government does is just PR after they make the decision. It's, we're going to pick this. Okay, now let's throw money at it to make sure that everyone thinks that we're right. And or else we're going to lose popularity. And once that happens, if it goes too far down the slide, then shit hits the fan.
That's why it's very, very important to learn history and look through history. I mean, I'm not like a history junkie, but I learn history, and it's more about learning the foundations of what things are built upon, and then obviously looking at other structures, right? So if you look at the American structure, right? So I went to Costa Rica, no military. They spend no money on military. It's all environmental. They give free healthcare. No money on military. They use the bordering countries to help support them, right? So I'm like, wow, interesting infrastructure, small GDP, whatever. And basically what I learned through the Fed is a lot about the economics and the GDP and the way that you support these GDPs, the gross domestic product. How do you support these economies, right? US is very retail based. A majority of the money, almost 70% of the money that we make is retail based, which is, go into the store and mall. That's where
swiping that
consumer
card.
spending is a lot of, exactly.
Swipe.
Right? That's one fundamental thing, right? And I would say it's more learning fundamentals of the economics of where you're around, right? So it would be that, right? The U.S. spends a lot of money on military. A lot of money. I think majority of our money goes to that.
Ton of money. Yeah.
So okay, if we have this budget and this is this, and just how I described Costa Rica, which is different. Smaller GDP, smaller population that they have to account for. Obviously, US is different, but still in the same analogy. And this is historically too. So it's hard if you've had this for 100 years, or if you've implemented this structure versus a European structure where they have healthcare, where they created this structure. They have the EU, their GDP. They don't have as much as a population to support. When you start to think about things, econ is a beautiful art. It's the art of like finance, right? So if you start to learn a little bit of that, at least for me, it became really simple to understand a lot of things. I didn't really have to question because I thought about where the money's coming from, how the things were built. Okay, so realistically, they're not going to change overnight, and they're not going to make this huge change because infrastructurally, it would create this seismic flip to a modern everyday society, right? Which is like, for example, I think the 2008 crisis is just something that built over time, something that we knew that was flawed. I was working in regulation, so I understood that like regulations are these bounds, right? But you can't not eliminate regulation. So someone goes like, why can't you do insider trading? Why in the 80s, why did all these people make money?
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't as many rules there. Okay. So let me give you even a very like technical example, right? So if you look from the financial crisis until now, right? Banks traditionally make money in whatever certain way, right? And the way that at least I would look at like revenue streams, and they weren't making the same. It was hard for banks to make money in, I would say, not the traditional way, but in the ways that they would usually get revenue versus like cutting costs, right? Because the only way you make money is you make more money or you cut cost.
Yeah. So lending money out to people is usually how the banks make
making money.
Yeah.
Or you cut cost. Oh, we made so much profit. We cut cost.
Yeah.
But then you see how technological advances sort of, you're able to cut more costs, right? So I would look at something. I remember they had this Harvard guy come in and they said it, and I was like, everyone was like, whoa. And I was like, I sort of sat back for a second to analyze, and I was like, I sort of thought of this. If you think about it and you take time, it's sort of common sense. So it was like, oh, they're not making revenue streams in different ways. If you go to JP Morgan, they have to do this much to make, they have to charge you 8% on a loan because they have to account for all these fees versus going to a Quicken Loans who only charges you 4% because they don't have to do all these regulation type of fee, the regulatory embedded things that they have to pay off.
So the more regulations you have, the more costs you have.
Of course. Yeah. Absolutely. That's automatic, right? So I would see those differences and it'd be like, what is the average consumer going to? Of course I'm going to take the loan for 4%.
Yeah.
Right? And this is changing banking because now banks have to go into more electronic. Yeah, they have to go into different ways to make money other than from the crisis. They were really just cutting cost a lot. Cutting. They weren't really making the ample amount of money because the regulations were sort of tying them down. So you see, it's almost like these you realize how all the parts are put together, and you can't really play with one part one way. So some people go, oh, let's have healthcare for everybody. It's like, okay, guys, it's really cool to ideally have this idea. It's great. We're human. It's great to have these ideas and strive for them as much as possible. But look at the reality. Look at the numbers. Look at how it's built.
Yeah.
People never do that. You say you saw that article that was as clear as day as this. So if I see something like that, my conclusion, because the way I think is like I connect across. I try to parallel things. I go, oh, they don't care they don't care. These guys are making money. So you think and they're human. Like, what is that? I'm going to have to fend for myself, basically, to some degree. So, people need to, I think, do that a little more.
Yeah. Or the one solution, there would be many facets to this, but something that popped in my head when I was reading the article on the people in Congress violating the Stock Trade Act is pay people in Congress more so they're not susceptible to things like bribery. Wait, let me finish.
They make too much money,
but if you make $200K a year and you have the possibility to double that on a single trade, of course you're gonna say yes to that. Mm-hmm. But if you spent more, let's say you pay people in Congress $500K a year on average. Yes, some people may still take some bribes and they may still try to do insider trading, but you're going to get less people who are willing to take the risk of losing a $500,000 a year job. And I know people are going to hear that and be like, you're a fucking idiot. And maybe I am, that people are just going to adjust their levels of greed. So if they are getting paid $500K, they're going to say, I want to trade so I can make $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to realize that the system of government we have set up is a popularity contest where you have people that run for positions and they win those positions based on literally how popular you are. People vote for you and you occupy that position. It's not a board of people that are looking at resumes like an application process. Like when you apply to the Federal Reserve, I'm sure it's a very stringent and involved process of filtering this person socially, emotionally, psychologically, to see if you can handle it. And when you have a system that's set up where you essentially vote for people and you win by being popular, you get people who are good at winning popularity contests, and maybe those aren't the best people to run a government.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why when people talk about the high school thing, and you would always hear it over and over again in your core, you start to see why it is. It's like, oh, it's people at the end of the day. So it's always going to be this popularity contest. It's like, oh, I realized for work, it was just like, oh, it was never how hard I worked. It was just like, I smile.
How much does my teacher like me?
Yeah. I smile. Am I tall? Do I look better than my other counterparts? This is why I'm getting what I want, because I'm charming, whatever. I'm charming this person or this person. Like when the girl comes, like, how is this dumb person, the girl who's hot or whatever, how is she this high level? Okay, she can't because she could be intelligent, but she also knows, a woman's essence, even though you learn in psychology, a woman's essence, not that it's their asset, but it's like it overtakes you. It overtakes you no matter what. It's like a human code type of thing. It's to caveman times, right?
Yeah.
The strongest, the biggest, the most buff, he and the woman is gonna look for the biggest provider. It's these Darwinistic or maybe predate or cavemen like type of things. They just repeat. It never really it's crazy to me. It's almost like it never really changes. It's just sometimes we get confused by the mask and the players and the costumes and the things that we are around. The environment is the only thing that dictates.
Yeah. So I want to change topics a little bit.
Yeah.
to and this will be my transition. So can you pass me another Topo Chico?
Yeah,
and this will have to do with the question. What is your, and take another one for yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you.
What is your favorite drug to paint on or be creative on?
I'm sober.
You're sober.
I'm sober. Yeah, people are really surprised. I'm sober the entire time when I paint.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were saying right now. I'm like, do you know there's alcohol in the? Like I've been sober for 8 years now, sipping the hard seltzer. And I'm like, shit, I just threw this dude off the wagon. But when you paint, you're sober.
Yeah, so people are really, I think, generally surprised. I think because some of my art and especially the colors looks pretty psychedelic. But I'm sober. I think this just gives people a prelude of what goes on in my head all the time. Not that I'm a schizo or something, but like I'm always having these type of images. This is what I see on a day to day. I always feel like when I'm sober, I'm actually crazier than when I'm like on something or sedated. Those sort of actually like calm me more. Like, they sort of like calm me down. Obviously, give me the different perspective and things. But I'm like when I'm sober, my mind's like there's like or like let's say like. For example, if I have a dream, maybe I have a lot of nightmares or something, but I'm not really reacting in them. I'm sort of just in them.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I see demons or things like that, but it's just like I have things that are just going through my head that are so weird sometimes.
So most of these things are visual? Because I get I'll get words or phrases in my head, like thought patterns. There sometimes there will be a visual aspect to it, but other times it'll be like I'm working out in my apartment. There's a workout space to the right of me, and I have the thoughts of being alone, like just the concept of being alone beyond the word. Like it just is in my head, and it's not a visual depiction of being alone, and I'll just sit on that and it'll stay with me for 45 and I'm like alone. Or other times I'll have a rant in my head, something that pops up, maybe a podcast I listened to a year ago and a word sparks it off, like fence. Maybe I listened to a podcast and some guy said the word fence in the podcast and I see a fence, and then it connects me back to this podcast about relationships or something, just because I'm walking by a fence, and maybe it's a result of the ways that we're creative. Like I'm thinking of words and I'm doing podcasting. You're visual in your painting.
That's wicked that you did that. To me, that's like, what the hell? That's scary. Like it almost like the like I don't even see the word. It's just the concept. I think about the concept of it. But I feel like a lot of people, they must have thoughts that make them feel crazy, but creative people may have a little bit less of a filter where they feel like they can express those thoughts absolutely
sober or slightly sober, 2 hard seltzers deep when you're on a podcast. But I don't think there are a lot of people that don't have things pop up into their head that make them question their sanity. That's part of the human experience, having words or visuals pop up and you go, oh shit. And then you're back and you're on the train and you think, I should kill this guy next to me. And then you press it down and you go to work and you forget about it. And maybe, you're not a murderer, but you want to research and make a serial killer documentary. I don't know. There's so many or just things you think are odd, like, wow, I'm happy being alone. And then you never express that at all. And you get into a relationship maybe because you feel like that's the societal expectation, but maybe you're just completely happy alone. You're alone, but you're not lonely. And I feel like people must have those type of thoughts that make them question, that almost make them feel like inhuman, but those are actually the most human thoughts you can have. And then you share them in a painting, and that's perceived as crazy because you're sharing it. But I think part of the reason why people identify so much with works of art is that you see the crazy in yourself that you were afraid to share in someone else that did share it. And you're like, oh fuck, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah,
didn't.
yeah,
but I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
do
yeah,
anything
yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I saw that, or I thought that, or I felt that, and this person is tapping into that, and they put it out.
That's the biggest appreciation I definitely like from creating this art, as far as like, because at first I was like, I don't care, this is just for me. But as when people really resonate with that, it's dope, because especially my art being intense, it would be like when I see someone go like, ooh, I'm spooked, I'm like, oh, I know you don't sit with yourself that much. I know, because someone who can like stand there and then look at my work and be like, yo, that's me, da, 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 da. You know, especially having the experience when you show someone and they cry. I've shown someone my art and they've cried in front of me, and I was like,
you were holding a gun to their head? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I meet this dude, and he became my homeboy because he became my homeboy, or like my photographer, because I first meet him and we're at a party. We're at like some party, and I'm like, yeah, I paint, da 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 da. And I was like, here. And he looked and he goes, what the fuck? Honey mustard.
Yeah.
And he was like, honey mustard, I love honey mustard. I was just like, yo, what?
That's
like, bruh.
That's part of the childhood series that you did with
No, it's like a yellow face.
Oh, yellow face. Okay.
Yeah, yellow face. But like exactly what you're saying, like I feel not as alone. I like to spend a lot of time alone, and I feel like the art I create is me being vulnerable, going to these dark places and like, I don't know how comfortable this makes me feel, or like when I do it, it's like this expressed a really like suicidal type of, or like this is on a plane, not that I'm going to do, it's like, this is really, and then when someone goes like, oh man, like, yo, I really resonate with that energy. That's me. When you say that's me, that's when I look at my paintings. Like, that's when I figured it out for me, myself. It was like one day, because I didn't know what I was creating whenever I was doing these dark images, or it was like, what is this? I looked and it was like, that's me. That's me. That's me. I just kept saying it. And it was like, oh my God, I'm creating a version, or a part of it is creating a version of myself within it. And then when someone resonates with it, you don't even feel alone anymore. You feel like all I have to do is impact one person. And that's what I think, even my mission throughout life, to impact and help people. That's like, yo, if this is the thing that has the most profound effect on, and it only needs to impact one person for me to feel like, man, I did my job with that.
Yeah. It's like there's the actual art itself, and then there's the art of reaching down and digging up some shit that may be perceived as crazy, and having the idea before you even try to concretely express it in some form of art, that you have to practice reaching down there. And some people never do. Some people never take that crane and dig down into their darkest or saddest or happy or whatever. There's a bunch of shit swirling down in everyone's psyche, and a lot of people, which is sad, just go through life without ever exploring it and seeing what comes out, because maybe they think that they'll be judged as crazy, or they'll be seen as an outcast. They'll feel more of an outsider than before they released that piece of art into the world.
Or we go to these muses, which are drugs, alcohol, these typical things in society that we see, which can, drugs can bring you to a place where you see
in the right amounts.
They can make you see things differently. But I say it in the form of like, I can relate, I can understand why Mac Miller or Amy Winehouse, because they go to that's why their stuff is, how are they hitting such profound things, right? The things that resonate with people, especially within our generation. Yeah. Right? It's because they're going to, and their music sort of like, Faces, Mac Miller Faces is like probably one of the darkest albums, but it's probably like one of my favorites, and a lot of people resonate with it. But you could see how much pain this guy is going through. Kid Cudi, another artist.
Yeah.
I saw his documentary and I almost like cried through it, because I was just like, this guy was going through so much and he was so vulnerable. Yeah. Which humans are very sensitive, and it's like you go to such a dark place and you would let it out, and instead of like keeping it to yourself or the people that are around you and open for, so you could see how people, like you're saying, go to this dark place, but then they get stuck in it.
Yeah.
You get really, that's depression. You get really, really stuck with it because you look at it. And this is what Carl Jung helped, because he gave a random throw-in was like symbols. It was like he would give these symbols, like when you watch a Disney movie, there's one movie with the cat, and the cat has the face of like the devil. It's basically the face of insanity, right? That's the symbol of it. And okay, that's another example, but going back to like the artist, that's when you see when they're in this dark place. That's why they get stuck in it, and then they're gone. They're away from society. They're out of society.
Yeah, I remember a part of the Kid Cudi documentary. Which one was it? Was this on Hulu? I forget.
Amazon Prime? The one that came out.
Yeah.
You saw that, right?
Yeah. Because if there are multiple, I'm sure there are multiple documentaries about him, but I think we're talking about the same one. Mm-hmm. So there's one part of it where he's talking about what's going to be the lead single on Man on the Moon with Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah.
And he's going to the head of the label and saying Pursuit of Happiness is the lead single.
Yeah.
And it's vibey, it's weird, it's wavy. It doesn't sound like a typical lead single, and he was talking about the executive telling him, like this is not it. This is not going to be the single for the album. And he's like, no, fuck it. Like, this is it. Mm-hmm. And we all know what happened with Pursuit of Happiness. Mm-hmm. That song fucking exploded. And that level of vulnerability, him willing to make a beat and then fucking hum over it into a microphone. You don't even have to say words. And write lyrics that people that are true to you, and they're so honest and deep. And he talks about not being able to meet fans unless he was on drugs or cocaine. Like everyone's been on that wave where you feel like you can't go out into the world unless you're stimulated in some way, mm-hmm. even if it's just coffee. Like, mm-hmm. I can't even get on the Zoom meeting before my coffee. And for him, for years, he talks about that being cocaine with fans, and it's like, that's not crazy. That is
superhuman.
It's superhuman. It's extreme, but it's not crazy, because everyone knows the feeling mm-hmm. of being in a position where you need to be in an altered state to interact. Mm-hmm. And then going back to Pursuit of Happiness, just knowing that will resonate with people. He knew this is it. Something inside him, this is going to be the single. And then he put it out, and it was everything and more that he could have expected. And now he's fucking Kid Cudi. Like, mm-hmm. he's the man.
And that was crazy, because like, it's almost like, even if I describe my art to some people, I can see, especially in that documentary, Pursuit of Happiness, I thought it was just a vibey song. And he's like, this was one of the darkest songs ever. I was just like, oh shit. Like,
yeah.
And if you remember the documentary, he talks about one album where he just didn't want to talk. He was just like, I'm not going to talk about this one, because he was like completely suicidal on that.
Was it Speeding Bullet?
Yeah. And then I remember when it came out, I listened to it and I was like, oh, this is okay. And then I went, after the documentary, I went back. I was like, yo, like, this guy was going through, these hums are different types of hums,
So I have a question to ask you that goes off of craziness. So Reddit is a goldmine, by the way. If you're a podcaster out there, you're trying to come up with topics, dude, I'm searching around. And so there's a post on Reddit about the movie Frozen, the animated movie mm-hmm. Frozen. So it reads, in Frozen, Anna sings about how she is so alone. The main character, Anna, blonde hair girl, mm-hmm. says, Anna sings about how she's so alone, despite having dozens of servants that work in the castle daily. This is because royalty don't see staff as people, but more of like a kind of mobile furniture. Mm-hmm. She would rather talk to paintings than speak with Kai, her lifelong valet. So my question to you, when you're in a room surrounded by your art, surrounded by your paintings, do you ever feel like talking to your paintings?
Yes.
Do you ever say things to your paintings?
Yes. Especially, I feel like, with the energy that I put into them, they talk to me. I have this one, a cat. In picture, I didn't get the right picture with the way I posted it, but it's in my house. And it has these eyes. And like, I just go like, sometimes I'm just sitting there and I look up and it's like, it's talking to me. Like you could just tell it's not saying words the same way that you were giving that analogy earlier where you don't see the word, but it's like, yes, they absolutely talk to me and I absolutely talk to them because like I said, part of them are a version of myself. One of the paintings I want to talk about is the A Star Is Born.
Yes. Yeah, let's get into that.
That one is especially one that I talk to a lot and it freaked me out because I thought it was one way. I thought it was my friend, but it was actually, I don't want to say enemy, but it was like something else.
Do you want me to bring it up while we're describing it?
Yeah.
You can keep talking about it. I'm just going to bring it up on the laptop.
Yeah. So it's this image of a guy, you know, like some.
Is it more recent or is it further down?
The guy screaming. The guy screaming. Yeah. Right there, up there. Yeah. So I remember sitting and I was thinking of like I don't know, I had like this type character. Like,
yeah.
I always like, you know, I guess my images are usually cartoony-ish to some degree. And I think at this point, instead of being a person who, again, being sensitive, would sort of like, as a person, I don't want to say level down, but I would always adapt to my environment instead of like being volcanic and sort of like, this is how I feel. I don't care. I don't care how you feel. And I felt like the art and you know, through painting and doing a lot of stuff, it started to let me like release myself. Like, I don't care about anything. I don't care how people feel about anything else anymore. I'm going to sort of express myself, which was really cool. And again, going back to that volcanic thing, I thought it was A Star Is Born. Like, hey, he found himself. He can speak. He can talk. He has something to say. He can yell because I'm a person with a lot of energy. So, he lets his thing out, right? So, you know, I was like, it's not that vulnerable. It's more of like a confidence piece for myself. I feel really good at like, I feel, this is exactly how I want people to sort of view me. Like, it's like me at like 10 years old in some capacity, right? To me, it resonates when I look at it. It's almost like a version of me at 10 years old when you sort of like gain consciousness, but then you get bullied. So that's when you start to feel like maybe you should not express the weird thoughts. Yeah. You learn it at an early age, right? It's not something that when you're an adult, you learn it sort of through school when you're sort of like, all right, I shouldn't be too weird or I shouldn't say this.
Yeah, because you don't grow up with your own understanding of weird. That gets taught to you by your friends or your teachers, you know, parent-teacher conferences. The teacher will say to your parent, you know, Timmy's been talking a lot about knives in school and, you know, he should really not stop drawing knives. And then you don't understand that when you're a kid. So maybe you take stop drawing knives as stop drawing in general. And then you just suppress that. And it's sorry to cut you off, but it's just like that. The formulation of the concept of weirdness that gets, it's something that we learn, and a lot of times I feel like it hinders us.
Yeah. Especially so, it was almost like that 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old when it goes from like adolescence where you can still be a little weird from like 3rd, 4th grade, and then you start to mature. People start to whatever, where you start talking about whatever subject. And I was almost like speaking to that self, like, yo, I finally got over that so I can actually grow up. You know, childhood traumas, right? I can actually grow up now. Because now I know what I want to say. So I felt like that's how that energy felt. So I create this piece. I was really happy with it because it was one of the ones that I felt correlated directly to me, as opposed to some where like, I don't know where they're coming from. So I was always talking to it like, it was always like pumping me up like, yeah.
And again, this is called A Star Is Born, and I'll link this to the description as well. I like this because normally when you think about a star as a human being, like Lady Gaga, you think of that person becoming the star. The energy is coming from the outside into them and they somehow are leveling up. But the guy in this painting is exhaling the stardom. So it's like he's releasing it onto the world, and it's not even his anymore. That is at least my interpretation of it right now. Is it's something he's getting rid of. It's not something he's taking in from the world.
That's a great way to say it, because I never was ever pretty much explained it that way, because it is, I guess that's what I was seeing. It's like, it's not my own ego. It's part of it. I think I was interpreting it too in my ego way, but it's sort of like, I'm not the star is it within me.
Yeah.
It's coming from out of me. So it's like, after all this time of hiding that star within you that you sort of know that you have, it's like, I can't hold it no more.
Yeah.
It's time to let you know what I have to say. It's time to put my shit on the map, right? I'm Arthur right here. What's up? You know? I'm here. That's what I felt when I did that. I'm here. What's up? Right? Yeah. So,
like announcing yourself to the world.
Yeah, which is very empowering, right? When you finally say, like, I have a statement. This is my time. Now I have something to say. So I had these friends that I was seeing, you know, you meet every type of person in Brooklyn. And I showed them this picture, right? And they were like, yo, your art is sort of like the religion Santa Maria. If you've heard of it, Santa Maria, the sacrificial type of religions.
It's sacrifice. I haven't heard of it, but it's human sacrifices?
Not human sacrifice, but things.
Things, okay. So like Lent, will you give up something for
No.
Lent?
Like, we sacrifice something in order to get something.
Okay.
Blood.
Oh, okay.
Like the dark magic type of, like, you know what people consider the voodoo type
like
religions?
Ritualistic sacrifices.
Yes. So, and that's one of the ones from Cuba, right? Originated Cuba. And
Santa Maria.
Yeah. So I mean, these people are like, Santa Maria. It's like my uncle from the shaman from excuse me.
Oh no, it's a good sound effect for Mike. Make that the intro. Yeah.
He's coming. You should do a reading when he comes around. I'm like, me being like super curious, and I'm like, I want to touch everything. I'm like, yeah. This is stuff. This is the unknown. This is the people that stuff people say get away from. I'm like, yeah. I want to see. So a couple weeks go by. You say, hey, he's in town. Like, he could do the reading for you today. Today would be perfect. I'm like, cool. So I do this reading. And at the time, also, the dope thing about this painting is I finished it and then I got into a show in Lower East Side. So it was like this perfect, like, again, boom, 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 right after the Miami. I'm like, you know, it's like this painting really is resonating. It's hitting crazy. Like, it's time to go, right? So I'm even walking the way that I am. I'm confident but reserved, but it's more like I'm like a volcano, like type thing. I feel like Kevin Garnett or something like that. Like that
Hell yeah.
Right? So I do this reading, and this reading is like, again, really morbid. It's like, you know, it's the things that you would see, and it's like, me, I don't cry at things. So I think I realize that's where laughing and crying are so related. I laugh at everything. So when I get in trouble, if someone's like mad at me, like girlfriends would always get mad at me because if it's like I just laugh, but it's not like I'm laughing at you or the situation. It's just like
it's a reaction.
That's my reaction.
That's how you're processing.
Yeah, I always laugh at everything.
Yeah.
So this guy's going like, and I'm just sort of like, what's going on, right? Yeah. But at the same time, it was like this.
Like, are you casting a spell on me?
Yeah.
Are you? What's about to happen? You know?
Yeah.
Are you speaking a different language? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, and then, but at the same time, there was like this weird like presence, not like, but it was like something feels a little different. You can't really put your word. Something feels like this is on the realm. But anyway, the reading basically goes like, you need to be careful. You need to watch your blood. You need to be careful, like the way that you're expressing yourself. Something like that. Like, you're going to be the cause of your own demise, basically. That's what the reading was saying. It was saying something like, you will be the cause of your own demise. And then it was something of the sort, there was something else of the sort of like, was pretty accurate. Like, hey, you're a really good speaker. That's your really like that's really a lot of your gift to influence people. You could be a teacher, but it's generic.
Like, you're gonna share your gift with the world. Also, you're gonna cause your own death, and you're just like,
yes,
that is something I would and would not like to hear.
Exactly, but then the reason why I was attracted to the religion too is the duality of it. It's like you have to give something in order to get, which you realize, that's what people say, the things you need to do, right? You have to sacrifice in order to get something. So I was like, this actually sort of makes sense. So, and I am, even if I'm a happy-go-lucky person, I do have like mischief in me. I have a lot of mischief in me. My nature is like, I was always the good kid who like, let's say I was always liked. So let's say we're a group of kids, and it's not that I do something to do because I'm bad. It's more like I just do it for my benefit and it's fun.
Yeah.
Like mischief. But then when everyone gets in trouble, I never got in trouble. It would always be like,
because you could put on that front that
I was likable, and it was just like, Arthur, don't do it again type thing.
It's like the way that people, adults are good at being professional when the time comes.
Yeah.
You could put on that front as a good kid when the time came, and you're like, why would I do that? That seems so wrong. I can't. Let me know if you catch the guy who did it. Like,
exactly. And
I'll help. I'll help look for him.
yeah. But then the person next to me would get in trouble. Like,
yeah.
So with that, again, and being sensitive, I was always aware of the situation. So I was always using that to get through life. It helps me through life at the same time. But when I did this reading, it was telling me these things. So I started meditating in the summer where I would go by the water on where like Williamsburg Bridge is. Like, what's that park again? What's it called?
Oh, Domino?
Yeah, but the other side by Bushwick Inlet. It's called Bushwick Inlet, but it's like by Domino.
Park across. Okay.
But basically by the water, I would go there and meditate.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful because it would help me almost like clear out the day. So I was always using it as like a way to like, okay, this is how I'm whatever, right? And after I would meditate, it would almost like the world would open up in the sense that when I'm walking, I would take my time walking, but things wouldn't get in my way. It wouldn't be like people, it's not like the light would sort of work. If it's a really good day in terms of like I'm cleared out, it would be like the light almost synchronizes with the way. Like once I get to the stop, the light works where I can walk, or there's no cars that I can walk past, or no one really walking
so
my
you
way.
felt like the world was opening up for you in a way.
Yeah, I mean, part of it a little bit was doing the some of the psychedelic, messing with. I was doing a lot
mushrooms.
Of
LSD, mushrooms.
Yeah. I was doing that at the time too, which obviously opens the world up a lot more.
Microdose or more of a full dose?
Micro. Full, I would do from time to time.
How much? Because I've done microdoses before of truffles, psychedelic truffles, but I've never done a full mushroom regimen. How much were you taking for the microdose?
Microdose would be like a couple grams, like 1 or 2, or even when you take the chocolates or the edit.
Isn't that like a half? That's more like a half dose, because a lot of people take 4 grams of mushrooms for a full.
Oh, really?
Like a heroic dose, I believe, is 4 grams of mushrooms.
I mean,
people can't take that. So it was more than a microdose, but not a full dose.
It would be like me.
You were feeling it. You were feeling it.
Yeah. But it's like I'm a addictive personality. So when I do something, especially on that side, it's almost like I want to feel more. Drinking the same way. I'm not that drunk. I want to drink more.
Yeah.
I want to drink more. I always want to push things to the farthest level all the time. But beside the fact, I was doing a lot of that microdosing, and then I think that would obviously help a part of my creative juices, right? So I do this reading. I do my meditation. I think the day after. I think right after it, I boil the water, clear. I was walking, but there were certain things in the reading. It was like, watch your blood, but watch your stomach. Watch this area.
That was from the reading.
Yeah, watch
that
your
the Santa
abdomen.
Maria guy.
Yeah, like watch your abdomen. So there's nothing very concrete. That's not like it's not super concrete where you feel. I was getting scared because I've never heard something. Usually when you want to go to like you're saying, you want to hear the good things. If you go to a tarot, you want to, or whatever, those kinds of things. If you ever do it, you sort of want to hear like, what's the good outcome? You never hear something that gives like yeah, some bad shit's gonna happen. Some good shit's gonna happen, but bad shit's definitely
Damn,
happening.
bad shit, I'd rather just get hit by the truck. I don't want to know what day I'm gonna get hit by the truck. I just want to be. Just tell me the good shit and bad shit. I'll figure it out.
Exactly,
it's gonna happen anyway.
And I'm getting scared. I'm freaked out. And he's like, no, don't worry. If you da right. So I do this meditation. I'm walking back. It was freaking like everyone's getting in my way. When I usually just walk on the sidewalk all the way. I sit meditation, but I think the important one is the walking meditation because I see how distracted or not I get by my environment. So I just almost like walk.
What do you mean? Like visually, or are you paying attention to sounds?
What, everything. So it's like my eyes are open and I'm walking, and it's not that I focus too hard on being distracted, but it's like, you know how easily we get distracted. Like, oh, that right there. Oh, look at that girl. Oh, yeah, she's hot.
Thoughts, just I'm meditating. I have to send this email. Oh shit, I'm writing this email in my head. Oh fuck, I'm supposed to be meditating. Oh, now I'm mad at myself for not meditating. Exactly. Like this constant stream of So
it's like just
recognizing things.
Yeah, it's just walking and just letting the thoughts pass through. And it's just like maybe a short walk, a 10-minute, less than a 10-minute walk. But everyone was getting away. There was this guy with his backpack. It was in front of him, covering his thing. And I started like, yo, this shit is real. Then I get a phone call from my family and this really scary health scare situations happening. Then I remember I'm standing on the corner later that night. I was just walking on Bedford. I would hang out on Bedford a lot from time to time at that time. And it was like, this guy, and if sometimes when you're on like a busy street, like random things happen, especially in New York in the city. This dude gets out this car, and when someone's looking to do like they're sort of like crazy or whacked out, he gets out the car trying to like, who looks me in the eye so I can do something?
Yeah.
And I'm sort of like the only guy that if I turn and look like I'm just like freaking out.
Yeah, he's just looking for someone to make eye contact.
Yeah, exactly. So these consecutive small events happen and I'm like freaking out. And of course, the part of that religion, which is, I don't want to say the scam or how they get you, is that you need to get cleansed. You need a cleaning, right? So if you have a good person, I think they do the right normal thing.
That's very influencer of them to be like, this bad shit's going to happen to you. You have to do this juice cleanse that you can only get from us, or
and it's not
work.
A juice cleanse; it's a different cleanse than that.
What is it?
Sacrificial.
Oh.
So it goes and cleaning, like they give you like, I guess something. So anyway, he goes like, you got to find your God. So you can pay this much. He goes, you can pay this much. I was like, what's the best option? It was like, you can find your God. All right, you got to pay like $1,000, and I go find this guy. I'm like, what? He's like, or you could do the cleaning for like $100. And I'm like, yeah, cleaning. I need to do this.
Good sales strategy. The coming at you with the high mark. Like, look, this is gonna cost you $1,000. And you're like, what? That's ridiculous. And he's like, all right. Or you can have this option for 100, and then you're like, 100's good. But if he started out with 100, you would probably say, dude, fuck off, like whatever.
Exactly.
So good sales training by the Santa Maria religion. They must have a
religion in general. They're crazy salesmen.
Oh yeah, dude. Come
here. Yeah. Give me your tithes.
Yeah.
Give me your 10%.
Yeah. It's
supports the church.
Yeah, and it's based on guilt, but I sidetracked you.
So support the priest suit this month,
Yeah, no. Catholicism is all about, being humble and giving things to other people, which is why, I need to wear this robe that's, Saint Laurent and worth $6,500. But I mean, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, let me get this cleaning. So I go get this clean. I'm like, all right, fuck. I'm freaking out for the next couple days. Again, all these other events happening. I go get the cleaning in 2 days. We sacrifice a rooster.
You sacrificed the rooster with the guy? He did it with you?
He did the cleaning. He did that's part of the
cleansing. What did you have to do? Did he hold it down while you just crack its neck or something?
I had to hold it.
So
while he does he does the whole ritual to pray to the gods to hey, ask for like, hey,
what did
protect
you snap its neck or slit its throat? Like what was the snap?
Both? Yeah.
Neck snap?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So he's doing a reading, and then it happens, and then he's like, "This is
Well, this is
Your
the
cleanse
clinic.
now,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna pray to guys to protect. Here's some soap.
Okay.
Use this soap 3 days in a row. I'm like, okay. And then I think it was like go by the water and like clean like sacrifice like fruits or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I think you see in other religions, like more Eastern philosophy, where they do if you've ever looked, sometimes you'll see like some like Oriental type of, like they'll have a religion where they just leave like fruits out in some places or in the water or something. So it made sense. I put the connection together, like that is some sort of truth to humans, like this sacrificial type of religions, right? Or there is something there, right? But so I go through this whole cleaning, go through this whole experience. I didn't show the shaman my art, and I show the shaman. I go, oh, by the way, actually, I'm a painter, and the whole reason I did this dude barely spoke English too.
Yeah.
I was like, the whole reason I did this is because they sort of like looked at that painting and said there was like some relation.
Yeah.
He goes, that's Echubi. That's one of the gods. The god of mischief.
Ah.
And basically, I looked at the painting again and I go, so I wasn't foretelling me like being confident and being this like righteous person.
And this is a Star Born, right? Same painting.
He
looked at that and was like, "This is a god in our religion."
Yeah. It's like multiple hundreds of gods, something like that, right? And he was like, "It's that," and that's one of the ones who's the one who opens and closes doors for like your opportunities, but the god of mischief, right? And I was just like, I look at the painting and I'm like, oh wow, so me screaming isn't this righteous feeling of jubilation. It's actually like I said, what could cause my own demise? Me being volcanic and being in the street and being like, I don't give a fuck about your opinion, because that's the type of time I was on when I'm really like expressing myself. I could just be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Straightforward and very passionately, like in the Kanye type of voice where it's interpreted like, yo, what are you, who are, what?
Yeah.
You know, you never know who you're going to say that to on the street, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't care anymore.
So my mind is going towards the business side of things, where I'm thinking, what if this guy, his fee is $100 and then he pays someone $50 to be a person in your world, or the person world where he tells you something about the stomach, and then he's a guy walking past you with a backpack clutching his stomach, and he paid that guy $50, and then he said, which I would have probably fallen for too, and maybe he didn't do it, but I'm just thinking like, is this guy somehow planting people in my life? This is what I would think if I went to one of those things. Did he pay this guy $20 or whatever?
Of course.
And he said, I'm gonna have a problem in my leg. And then I see some guy that looks like he's bleeding out of his leg. And I go back to him. I'm like, yo, I'll take the $1,000 option. Like, if this stops in my life.
Yeah.
But it was an experience nonetheless. Like it seems like no matter if something spiritual happened or shifted, you had this experience and you have something to talk about.
And it's the connection. It goes all back to the painting, right?
Yeah.
So imagine how I gave the Miami story. This is an experience pretty much happening right after this. So it's sort of correlated. And at the time, like I said, I'm doing them things, right? I'm with the shrooms. So I'm not saying I'm connected to a higher level, but I'm doing it frequently, frequently, right? So it's almost like, not that I'm seeing things, but I feel this deeper connection to the earth and whatever, and what's going on in my life and my path. So, of course everyone was saying like, why did you question that? I'm like, of course. I'm a very hesitant person. Like I said, I'm intellectually curious. That means I question a lot of things, right? I question the viability, the truth to things. But Zach, I'm telling you, there is of course in the spirit realm, I know that was something I do not want to mess with. Like dark energy, because I create from a place that relates to it to some degree, but that was something that Of course, if you have the wrong, because then the guy sort of explained, he's like, yo, you could believe it or not, but I've been doing this for 30, 40 years. And this is what people do in Cuba. This is what you're taught because, you know, we don't have opportunities like we go for a job. So most people end up going into religion and going to these religions. So I've been doing this for 30, 40 years. So I'm like, give or take, you know, I'm like, well, not that I'm not going to dissipate because he's almost telling me his truth and I'm chilling with him. I'm smoking with him. I'm cooling with him too. It's not like this guy's like, coming in and some voodoo. I'm chilling with the dude too, like a normal dude. We're watching everything's normal. And then when he goes to that place, he was doing whatever. So it was like, yo, this is something that I do not, because people would mention it before. You don't play with that voodoo dark magic stuff. Me being African too, even though I grew up Christian, the origins, there's a lot of voodoo over there, right? I was almost to the point where I was like, when I went to Kenya this past winter, that I was trying to seek something, and I had a little bit of an experience where it was just like, okay, I'm never messing with this thing again. This thing is too much. This is too powerful. This is something that you end up with doing the wrong person. Not only are they going to scam you, number one, and make you like keep paying money because they keep scaring, you're gonna end up with bad, and then. You know, manifestation is a sort of a thing you think about it already too, right? Like, let's say, hey, I want to do this podcast with this. You say it to yourself every day. You write it in your journal every day. Then you actually put it into action. That's quote unquote the action behind it. But it's one of those things, once you have this preconceived thought in your head too, you know, if you think more negative things will happen.
Yeah, it's
without
like coming
doubt.
from your thoughts. It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of not messing with the dark energy. So I went to New Orleans this past Halloween.
Freaky place,
with
I
my
heard.
girlfriend. I heard there's especially around Halloween time, there's a lot of possession, demonic darkness that's associated with the things that went on in New Orleans. And I'll get into one of them specifically. And I just released a podcast with my tour guide, Brittany Cherie. She did the Dark History Comedy Walking Tour in New Orleans, where she's a stand-up comedian, but she also incorporates these very dark and horrific events that occurred in houses in New Orleans, like slave experiments, or there were these two brothers that claimed they were vampires and were killing people and stacking bodies in their apartment. This is like 150, 200 years ago. She met a woman who identified as a vampire with a blood donor. This dude that would legitimately like let this woman suck blood from it. Like New Orleans is wild. Like they got darkness down there.
What?
Yeah. Dude, it's go check out Brittany Cherie on the Auxoro podcast.
I don't know if I'm going for Mardi Gras no more than that.
Yeah, dude, it's a dope city. I had an unbelievable time. It was a good time. And so we got to this one part on Brittany's tour where it was the mansion of this woman, Madame Lalaurie, who she's long dead, but she lived in this mansion in New Orleans, and she would have slave experiments in her house. She's a white woman, like I assume heiress, old money, and this is when slavery was still going on, and she would perform experiments on the slaves. I'm talking like throwing them in fucking stoves, like mutilation, medical experiments, and there's so much shit that went on in this house that the house was discounted like $2 million or something, like the value of the house, because no one wanted to buy it, understandably. And so there's this one gallery, which is like a gallery is like a balcony, but the poles go down to the ground. So you could walk under, it's like a balcony you could walk underneath with the poles that go into the sidewalk. And she said that it's very bad luck to walk underneath the gallery of the Madame Lalaurie house. I've been living here for years. I've never walked under it. I just won't do it. And in my head, I thought, okay, even if I don't believe in the sort of dark energy, whatever's emanating from this house, and I do believe that there's energy that gets left on buildings and walls and things that we may not even be able to perceive. There's energy of experiences. I'm not going to fuck with that. Even if I don't believe it, I'm not going to walk under that gallery. And as soon as she said that, two people from our tour walked underneath the gallery, and we just went like, like one of them pretended to have a heart attack, and she was like, "Oh my god!" And right before Brittany said the worst thing you can do is mock a ghost or mock a spirit, and she did both. She walked underneath it with her boyfriend, and then she pretended to have a heart attack. And in my mind, I thought she's dead. I was like, this woman is dead, even though I don't consider myself someone who believes in those sort of things. In my head, I was like, oh, she fucked up. Like,
it's the instinct.
That bitch is gone.
Yeah, it's the instinct.
Why would you even want to fuck with that? Because worst case scenario, like best case scenario, you just walked under a gallery and nothing's going to happen to you. Worst case scenario, you're now haunted by some demonic spirit for the rest of your life.
Exactly. And that's why even I didn't really get very spiritual like until maybe I started doing the art, because it started to tell me things and speak to me. But in that same sense, even having the instinct to be like, this is powerful. Like this, do not mess. I don't know what's there. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm just going to listen to what they say. When you, not that you're going to die instantly, but man, that those things can really haunt you. Like you said, something could happen in their life later on because you never see them again, but something of that sort could stick onto them. You know, who knows, right? Who knows? Maybe they're already even living demented lives or whatever. But me, like, especially with those, I'd be like, I can't see the thing. But when someone speaks about that kind of story, that someone does experiments in the house, it's just like if you had your grandpa who passed away, any family member who passed away, and you go to a place where they used to stay or something, or you have this moment with your family, or some BS, like whatever, and you're like, somebody in the family will say like, oh, they're sort of here right now, like I can feel them. You don't see anything, you don't really even feel anything. It's stuff like that.
Some energy, some vibe that you're getting.
Yeah, some little sprinkle, right? When it's dark energy, like the same way that you want things for good luck, those things can mess you up. And I only, when I experienced the Santa Maria, that was like a firsthand experience of like the person who played on the porch, like, oh, let me see what this is. I'm really curious. I don't know if I believe it, but let me see how it is. Everyone's scared of it. It seems intense. I'm an intense person. It was just like, this is a little bit too, I could see, not that I was spooked for my own self. It was like, not that it was too much going on, but it was like, yeah, you spook yourself up because they can just, a ghost or whatever, even if you believe it or not, could just throw something at you and it messes your head up. It's not that something bad actually happens to you. Yeah. So,
it's true. I'm going to take one more piss and then we'll end off with a couple questions. I got that small bladder syndrome. You go first. You go first. That's one of the, we don't have to go on the government shit for too much longer. But it just is. It's crazy how outside some of the government organizations seem from the actual government. Like the president, who's supposed to be in charge of the entire country, doesn't even know all the shit that some of the organizations underneath him do. And it's a need to know basis for the president. So it's like if the president doesn't even know what the NSA or CIA, FBI, the full extent of what they're doing, who the fuck does?
Again, they all have specific agendas and they're all separated from each other.
So no one can ever know everything. It's all a need to know basis.
I tried, but it's too much. Yeah. It's too much. They take too much of your personality.
Yeah. So we anyway, this is going to be a huge shift in gear, but it's a question that's more abstract, and I want to throw it out there and get your thoughts on it. So did you see the Drake hot sauce incident?
Yeah.
So for people who didn't hear about what happened, so Drake hooked up with an Instagram model. She does some sort of modeling, and allegedly after they were done having sex, took the condom that he busted in and put hot sauce in it, or he threw it out in the bathroom, went to the bathroom, put hot sauce in the condom in case, if you're rich as fuck like Drake, you got to worry about your semen. someone's going to try to put
She didn't sign the
that
NDA.
inside her. Yeah, she didn't sign the NDA. Exactly. The no dick agreement. No. If you don't sign this, you're not getting any dick. And so he threw out the condom in the bathroom after sex, and then apparently went into the bathroom, or allegedly went into the bathroom, and put hot sauce in the condom, and then came out of the bathroom, and then the Instagram model that he just slept with went into the bathroom and took the condom, dumped the contents of the condom into her vagina, like stuck it up there, and then ran out of the bathroom screaming like, ah, and it was because he put hot sauce mixed with the semen. So I wanted to ask you, since you have painted things that have to do with food, and you had this whole childhood series with food, this is a very adult topic, but if you were to depict that incident in art form, in painting form, how do you think you would go about that? What jumps to mind if you're trying to capture the moment where this, like, Drake's in his bed reading Instagram DMs, and all of a sudden this stripper Instagram model pops out of the bathroom and she's screaming with semen and hot sauce dripping out of her vagina? How would you depict that in an art piece?
My initial impression, like image, I sort of can see the girl, and I would get more so of that intense moment. I could see, because I like to focus on when it's I guess maybe the height of like something happening, which is the most intense part, right? I think like her in the bathroom, or some of this sort in a distorted place. Maybe not. I wouldn't maybe have the depiction of a bedroom and a bathroom and whatever the setting wise, but maybe something like Drake's head popping in while she's trying to do this act.
Yeah.
And I think the facial expressions would sort of say it all. It would be like this conflicting ideal, right? Like, especially on the woman, more so on the woman. I would depict more so on the woman, this like, no, I'm winning, but what the hell? I'm not winning. Like, it's an L at the same time. Like, it's hot, but like, why did I have this evil act? Why was I so curious anyway? Curiosity killed the cat. Why was I so curious? And he hit the cat, he was smashing my kitty, and now my cat is too curious for it,
Drake's like, you want to play with fire? I'll show you fire.
Yeah, maybe like
she's riding a volcano, maybe, and
a bunch of cats.
Yeah,
in like the bathtub or something.
In the bathtub.
Yeah, just looking at them. Yeah, something like that. Something. Yeah, I would definitely catch. I think the woman would be the focal point, because that's such a interesting. The way the news story came out, it's such an interesting depiction, right? Because it's like, how is she trying to victimize a moment when she's so curious to do a certain act? You know what she was doing. How do you find this?
Yeah, it's like there's a story circulating back when I was a teenager. Grew up in Long Island, so I remember reading the story about a guy who broke into someone's house through a skylight, and so he tried to drop through the skylight, but there were knives in the kitchen because the skylight was over the kitchen in the house, and he fell onto the knives and severely hurt himself, and he sued the family for injuring him with the knives in the kitchen. And I don't think he won, or maybe it didn't even go to trial, but that's what I thought of when this girl's like, yeah, Drake put hot sauce in his condom. I'm like, how do you know, bitch? Like, why were you taking his seed and stuffing it inside your vagina? Which, like,
we all know what you was trying to do.
It's a very, like, in a way, it's Drake should be honored to have had that experience, because how many guys can say really on the planet that a girl fished a condom out of the trash and tried to impregnate themselves? Because there's very few guys that are rich enough for a thought like that to enter someone's mind after they hook up with you. Like,
that's what I was going to ask you, Zach. I was going to be like, Zach, When you have sex with a condom, where is the condom? It's usually just like you have to throw it out, or it's just somewhere and no one cares about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Like she went into the bathroom, saw the condom, probably saw like something weird about it. Maybe it was colored, so she didn't see the hot sauce in it, and then she sticks it up her vagina. I imagine it to be almost like, have you ever had a piece of sushi with too much wasabi on it?
Yeah.
Like you dip it in and you think the wasabi's mixed evenly in the soy sauce and you're like, oh shit, I bit off a huge chunk of wasabi and it just fucking flares throughout your entire nasal cavity. I imagine it was that feeling, but in her vagina.
Goddamn.
And so whatever, but yeah, the
I would depict that in a very, I guess, animated way. Definitely like Cats, the curiosity killed the cat type of mantra. Type of way.
Yeah. Because she did it to herself, but she's trying to blame Drake for it.
Victimize herself.
Yeah.
And it's like, as soon as I saw that story, I was like, yo, Drake is so lit.
Yeah.
He is so lit. He put hot sauce. I should have thought of that.
Yo, like,
if I ever make it with this, all right, I'm doing it.
Yeah. Like people like people that keep hot sauce in their purse, Drake fucking keeps it in his pocket. And for different reasons.
Yeah.
People are like, oh shit, like I don't want to get caught at a restaurant without hot sauce. I'm gonna keep this in my purse. And Drake's like, yo,
she's trying to
I might fuck a bitch unexpectedly, you know. I'm Drake. It could literally happen anytime.
Yeah.
I need to keep that hot sauce in my pocket.
I gotta
just get those mini bottles of Tabasco.
Stay stacked. You got the magnums in one pocket, the hot sauce,
in the other. Yeah, she's like, why is there a condom wrapper and a hot sauce wrapper on your table?
We're gonna get food after Chipotle.
Yeah,
you know.
Exactly. So I have a question for you to end off that goes along with Carl Jung, because I saw you had posted a quote of Carl Jung on Instagram, and it went along with one of your paintings, and I recorded the quote from Carl Jung, and so that quote is: "Intuition is not mere perception or vision, but an active creative process that puts into the object just as much as it takes out." And we've talked about the creative process during the podcast. We've talked about gaining things and losing things, and kind of it being a back and forth between you and the world and you and the audience. And I want to know, like, do you feel when you put a piece of art out into the world, do you feel something taken out of you, whether it's on a emotional level or spiritual level? Like, do you feel like each piece of art that you create, you're giving something to the world, but you're also losing a part of you? Like, there is that loss that Carl Jung talks about, like the creative process puts into the object just as much as it takes out. Like, you're putting something into the painting, but then something is taken out of you. If it's a puzzle piece, you have to put something into that thing that you're giving the world.
I would say absolutely, because when I paint and create, I've never been more exhausted. You know, I realize how much energy it takes that I'm actually like creating, as opposed to a physical. Obviously, there's the physical component of just sitting there for a couple hours, but I would say there's the vulnerability, just in the same sense of a musician, that I'm trying to dig deeper into myself to get something. I would say part of it is releasing a lot of the dark energy, which is an expression, right? Me being a happy-go-lucky dude, or I would say it's part of my sinister. It's like, it's the duality, like it's these sometimes very cartoon-like characters, but very dark, right? I would say I'm taking out a lot of dark energy, which I think is good, releasing expression. But I think at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm losing something, but just like I was mentioning earlier, the Mac Millers and these Amy Winehouses, like me searching and digging deep is a sacrifice to get. If I'm trying to,
you are the chicken.
Yeah.
In a way.
Exactly.
You have to bleed your own blood onto the canvas in order for it to mean something.
Exactly. If I want that one person, right? Or even the understanding of my legacy, right? If I'm trying to do something different with my art, right? As opposed to having, like we were talking earlier, something with intention, right? There's this understanding that, hey, I'm spending a lot of time alone. I'm missing out on trying to get relationships with other women, trying to gain relationships, have a normal life. Like, part of me has to spend a lot of time alone to get to that point. So there's a lot of sacrifice. And it's like, all right, even there's also the part of, I might not get my flower. There's this I knew from a young age, like, there's this understanding that I could do this and I won't be this megastar until I die, which with most artists, or I won't be very recognized until I die, right? So those are sort of the sacrifices.
Or maybe decades or hundreds of years after you die. If you're recognized at all, there's how many artists do you know who, they pass away and decades pass until someone goes, oh shit, why didn't more people pay attention to this when this person was like, the classic example is Van Gogh sold one painting during his lifetime. That's fucking insane.
Did you ever, I saw the movie, I was like, bruh, like, damn, this dude lived a sad ass life. Whatever the depiction was of it, it was like, bruh, this dude was getting no type of play time.
Yeah.
Even there was someone who was making his bed, he wasn't even getting no type of play time. All his homeboys were like, yo, we're gonna go move and pursue art and making it, and he's still chilling on what I was like, damn, this is a really sad reality or sacrifice you have to give. Another example, Basquiat. Basquiat gets a lot of accolades, a lot, of course, and a part of the end of his life, of course, he was celebrated. He sold paintings, but he gets a lot of accolades of like, this guy is the modern, blah, blah, blah. And I would always oppose to that because I think people would compare me as a black artist closely to him, and my personality was like him. But then I would watch a lot of documentaries on him. I would watch a lot of documentaries on artists in terms of like understanding some of their process and methodology. But there were like some of the documentaries where it was like, oh, Basquiat, no one really liked, like, he didn't really have that many good shows. Like, people would go to his shows and not feel as impressed. Yeah. As people go, when you go to a Basquiat and you see a Basquiat, now you're like, right? But like, they would say like, of course he did get his flowers when he was alive, but they would say like, he's not appreciated. Francis Bacon I relate to a lot. That's where I got sort of my methodology of how to paint, where I paint it was like, what he would do, you'd be like, I'm going to paint during the day. And then in the evening, when I want to go drink, I would just be at the bars all day, which is what I was sort of picked up. Like, all right, he has some sort of structure to create and then still like have experience. He lived a pretty demented life where he was just fucked up all the time. And he would just be in his house alone. He would just be in a house alone with all these paintings. And then it would be like this one lady who feels sorry for him would help. There's this theme of like, other than like Picasso, who was like actually like, the thing that you realize is these guys are geniuses from a marketing and business perspective. Picasso would do these very complicated, in the first, he was very technical. But then once he knew people loved this shit, he would just not dub it down, but like, whoop, 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 doo, 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 whoop, whoop, whoop. And then everyone, wow, right?
Once his name became a brand and people wanted to own a Picasso, no matter what it was, I have a fucking Picasso hanging in my living room. He recognized that him putting his hand to the brush and then brush to the canvas created value in people's minds.
So it's like through a lot of these greats or people who are appreciated as greats, you see they have a process, you see they have a brand that's created, which is business, very business oriented. I have a business background, so this is something that's helped me excel a lot faster than other artists because I understand certain techniques. What approach do I want to take? In terms of sacrifice, that's a lot of the sacrifice. I sometimes, for example, not that I have a shitty dating life, but I'm starting to notice this pattern. And it's like, this is how I get inspiration. Like, a lot of my inspiration is dark energy. So I can't have my life isn't always going to be as good. There's going to be some part. So I would realize that whenever something traumatic would happen in my life, I usually run to women, and like a lot of women, or try to date a lot of women in like a short time span. And then I was finding, now that I was sort of in my passion flow, it would be like, oh, okay, art show. That means like 2 weeks of like, I'm not painting. I'm partying again.
Yeah.
I'm trying to date this chick. I'm going on a date with this chick. I'm smashing this chick. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And then it would be like, when you're doing that, that even when you start to mature, like that takes a lot of energy out of you. And then something bad would happen through that experience. Like, oh man, now I don't have a roster no more. Now I'm back. Well, inspiration time to create. I'm like, that means inspiration. But it's like, that's that example's in a sacrifice. Like, all right, I have my fun in a certain time. And then it's post having a really great moment. But then there's these points where I just go like really low. But then it's like, this is the inspiration that brings me back up again.
Yeah.
So it's like.
But at least you recognize that. I mean,
that's like 4 or 5 times I had to.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people go through life and don't even recognize that they're using someone or something to fulfill a void, which I've definitely done. And, I'm going to do in the future. It's just it's part of the human experience of feeling empty, and you don't want to confront that emptiness. So you put something in its place. So I think you're ahead of a lot of people just by recognizing the fact that, when I do this, when this is going right or this is going wrong, this is what I do in response to that. And a lot of people just ride that roller coaster without realizing that it's a fucking roller coaster and that they're fueling it. And they just accept that as, oh, this is life and it's always going to be the same and nothing is ever going to change and this is it.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the one important thing I want people to take from my conversation today. Like, really, you don't really need to search for things external. Everything is inside you. Once I started to learn my patterns, I started to understand how I interact with people. I started to interact. I started to realize environment is the only thing that dictates how I act. Then I started to see the patterns like that. It took me like me feeling empty a couple times to like, yo, this sucks.
Yeah.
And then
this
it's like,
fucking sucks.
Yeah. And then once I started going on this path of like helping myself or that quote you wrote early was like me learning social media, like, oh, let me see if I write something like not corny or cheesy, but like something very heartfelt. Let's see how people react. People are like, Arthur, I'm so sorry. Man, if you're going through something, talk to me. I'm so happy for you. I was like, I don't really give a fuck. I'm chilling, right?
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's just a quote.
It's
like the fucking the Instagram models that put some deep ass quote and it's a video of them twerking at a club in Miami, and they're just like, the heart comes to you. You can't come to the heart. And it's just them fucking picking up a bottle with their pussy, and you're like, what does that mean?
It's like that's the thing. It's like, don't take things so personal, right? Something like social media, I used to take very personal and like, I got to be this way. It's like, number one, don't take things so personal. When you look inside yourself and you'll find the truth or whatever you need, because when you know yourself, there's certain, like I just gave the analogy, like, hey, I sort of know my pattern. I sort of know I'm going to feed into this. I know it's this time. That doesn't stop me, but I know how to make myself not be too destructive to what I want to succeed or pursue. And then I think the last would be like respect. A lot of people, I think every human searches for respect, and it's important to understand that to get respect from someone else, you have to learn to respect yourself. And sometimes, of course, you sometimes have to fight for your respect. But sometimes it's like, respect yourself before you even expect it or give it to somebody. That's something I learned about a pattern. I thought I was a really patient person. I would say, and the thing about people is that the things that you think that you say and tell people that you're good at are probably the things that you're actually you're the worst at, or you're deficient in a lot of areas of that. So I was patient when it came to listening to people and things and talking. And that goes back to adapting to my environment. But then I realized I was disrespecting myself, because someone would think that they can walk over me. Someone thinks underrates me or overwalks me, right? I didn't tell them straightforward, okay. I didn't tell them straightforward, this is who I am, don't mess with me, right? So it's like, yo, learn to respect yourself. And also, like, you know, when you go through, like, what was I saying? Damn, all right.
You have to learn to know that you have value, basically respect yourself before you give that to other people. Some sort of center of self-respect and love.
Know your traits. No sort of like
you will you will tell other people what you're good at, you were saying. And sometimes that may not be true, or a lot of times that may not be true. That's to prop up your own ego.
Exactly. I thought I was patient, but it was actually a self of disrespect for myself, right? It was a form of disrespect because I was just sitting here letting someone talk their head off and whatever, and being like, I don't care. Like, or like just going to do my own thing. I would be like, oh, let me sit here and listen more and waste my time here. I'm really patient.
Yeah.
I'm really a patient
When in
person.
reality, you should have told that person to shut the fuck up. Or and just, you're like, I'm just leaving. Yeah. Like, this is not for me.
It's those kinds of things. Like,
yeah, patience is a virtue, but so is respecting your own time and realizing when when your time is being wasted.
Yeah, and that's when I started to make the changes, I think, obviously, in my life. But those three are a couple things I think I would give to people. Like, you know, you can pay attention. And it's the basic mantra. It's like the basic corny shit that people say that you be like, until you actually go through it, it's like, you have to work hard to achieve something. Nothing's going to come here. Right? It's like Mamba mentality. I'm a big Mamba mentality. Kobe got like 10,000 hours you got to put in. Like,
yes.
I'm sitting at home painting every day. I'm sitting at home painting every day. I mean, other than when I was like now when I've been sick, but like aside from when it's showtime, when I have the 2 weeks where I'm like sort of promoting myself, it's still involving me about whatever I want to do. I'm painting every day. So what are you going to tell me? And you know, when you do anything that you do better at, you're going to get better at it. What you going to tell me when this is already my life? This is already something I have. And I've been painting and I got 500 paintings or something. Not that I'm trying to rush, but I'm just focused on my craft every single day.
Yeah.
What are you going to tell me 5 years from now when I'm doing, when you're like, how did you do it? It's like, bruh, I've been doing it. I've been working.
Yeah.
How did you do it? You know, everyone asked, like I told you when we had the conversation earlier, how did you do it? Bro, you don't know all the, not that you don't know, but it's like, you just tell them like, when you're so much into it and versus like telling people things and talking about it, you know, it's just be like, I don't really know. I just do the same thing every day.
Yeah. When you sell an NFT 2 years from now for $20 million, people are going to ask like, how did you do it?
It's like, I met a dude in Williamsburg.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I have to just get your quick perspective on this as an artist, but like, what do you think about the NFT space as someone who's painting and putting out works of art into the ether, and you also see this digital space of NFTs where things are selling, you know, from a few cents to absurd, literally dozens of millions of dollars. What are your thoughts on that space with NFTs?
A couple things really quickly. I think interesting space. Even though I have more of a traditional type of art, I'm open to it. I'm receptive because I destroy my paintings too. Like, I'll burn a paint. I don't care that much because I can keep creating. So I see my skill set as actually really palatable. I've had a lot of people approach me and try to work with me. To me, I see a lot of the NFT space being branded. So if you have a brand, you're going to be able to cash in on it. It's anything. If you have a brand type and a following and it's not going to be that difficult. And if your audience is receptive to those ideas, right? So example, right? I destroy my art. I could have a piece that I worked on for like 2 months and just be like, I don't care, I want to burn it, or like I don't have room, I don't care, right? You know, someone could see a lot of value in that. In the NFT space, that's really palatable, right? I can create some sort of schematic or put it out there where people can get it one-time release.
You don't have to have this space in your apartment. You can just say, fuck it, I'm gonna put this I'm gonna upload this and I'll get rid of it. I don't have to burn it.
If I like I'm gonna destroy this in 24 hours, or
someone can buy an NFT.
So I sort of I'm definitely a very like open, receptive. I don't know if that's the route I'll go. I hear a lot of artists sort of like, no. I have artists who are very for it. I meet and very like, no. Oh. And then I have my friend group who's really into the space, my really close friend group. So they're trying to create the space, and they're trying to really involve me in it, which I'm open to things. Yeah. You can't not be open. People just aren't open to, yo, man, Zach, the one thing I got to rant about is like, people just don't, like we were talking about perspectives. If you're one way or the other, people are not open to just listening for a second and not being emotionally tied to it
100%
and being like, I see the benefits, I see the negatives. Then if you know yourself, you see if you want to do it. It's the thing about, you have to know yourself. You can't just be like swaying, like just listen to someone's idea no matter who they are, no matter their accolades. Dumb people say smart things too. Smart people are dumb. We're people. No one is better than anyone else. So you should give someone the ounces, the grain of salt, to just have a second to listen.
And
make your own judgment.
It's like people have certain trigger words like vaccine or Trump or Hillary, like whatever, and then that word elicits an emotional, almost a practice response from the person that overwhelms the logic, and they don't take a breath and just say, okay, what is this person saying outside of this word that's triggering me? NFTs, like
artist NFT, that is a huge trigger word.
And it's like, what is this person actually saying? All I took in was the word NFT, and I started to get this rage inside me. What if I took 2 breaths and recognized the word NFT and the sentence from which this person's communicating it, and maybe it's a space that's worthwhile. I have no idea. It's definitely a wave. When that wave is going to crash or keep going, or if it'll go in cycles, who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
But maybe it's something viable that will be a long-lasting option in the digital space. Maybe it'll be over tomorrow. Who the fuck knows? But it's something that's happening. And so I feel like the view you have is a good view, where you're open to the evolution of whatever the NFT space brings.
The methodology sounds really... crypto in a methodology, a basic, if you just look at what it tries to do, is a pretty unique, not even unique idea. It's what the financial system tries to do, right? It's the same exact thing. Hey, we're just trying to create value digitally as opposed to a physical, which is what we're just sort of trending ahead. So of course, people don't embrace the things that are new, that are going to be the next thing that we live through. So as the metaverse is going to take over, it's sort of creepy, because the metaverse seems like it really might actually like put it all together. Maybe might be the thing that puts it all together, where everyone's like, whoa, we're all in it, right? I'm sort of like freaked out, because now,
dude, I feel the same way. When I hear about people buying property in the metaverse, I'm like, yo, someone just bought a house for $200K in the metaverse. They're sold on the metaverse. They're buying property. They're buying NFTs to hang in their property. They're having, maybe I'll do a podcast 5 years from now and it feels exactly the same as this, but I'm wearing a VR headset. Like, who the fuck knows? Like,
right?
Like, we have Zoom conversations now, but I've seen demos of spaces in the metaverse, and where you're in a conference, but you feel like you're in a room. You're wearing a headset and you feel like it's a 3-dimensional room, not a Zoom call, 2-dimensional. It's like you look to your right and there's fucking Stacy, and you look to your left and there's Bob, and you feel like you're talking to people.
Freaky. They get you sleeping
fucking
in the meeting.
Freaked out. Exactly. Yeah. You're like, wake up, bitch. I see. It doesn't matter if you're sleeping in real life or virtually. We got you. But
dope.
So NFT is like a trigger it's a trigger for a lot of people.
Oh
in the
man,
art space.
people, you know how people are, but artists, that's a huge trigger word. Someone's face, immediately you'll be like, what? Don't talk to me about that shit. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, they're like, people, 68 million on one painting.
Then you have the ones who aren't making money on it.
Yeah.
But they're like, yo, I got my NFT coming out. So it's like, it's really interesting and funny because I'm being introduced to the art world. So I don't know this space as much. And as I'm learning it, it's like, it's the same as any other space. There's trigger words as this, but it's just really interesting how they react. As you mean, the art world reacts to it. You'll have NFT party. Hey, you want to join our NFT art party thing?
Yeah,
man, and it has a lot of people show up for it. Then you'll have something like traditional artist people. You'll go there, and then they'll be like, "Fuck that, man! Like, if you mention that, you don't even come here no more." I'm like, okay.
You're like, damn.
I just wanted the wine here, man. The free wine.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. It's, fucking, who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
We have no idea. People that say they know are just pretending, and I feel like it's a good space to be in where you don't know, but you're open to shit that's happening, whether it's NFT or whatever the fuck, like relationships, financial, social, to say, yeah, I don't know where the fuck we're going to be 5 years from now, but I'm open to new things that are occurring and
whatever. Let me just listen.
Yeah, let me just figure out what's going on.
I want to create something in the metaverse. I want to create like this. I have this dream, and like I'm going on a tangent, but I had this dream where it was like, I don't know what it was, but it was like this world, and it was almost like everyone was like, yo, Arthur, this is so fucking dope. But I feel like it's like, yo, if I created it in the metaverse, that's exactly what it is. Like this like, I want to create like, because if you've ever put on those VR goggles, it's like really interesting. You're so immersed in it. So it's like, oh, I want that feeling. I create like the environment of a volcano.
Oh yeah.
And like what's going on around you, or like some like really wicked world.
A dream could become art. You could recreate a dream, and then someone could enter your dream through the metaverse. And you tell you tell someone about your dream, and you say, "Oh, this is so scary," and I went through this, and the other person can listen, but part of them's going, "Oh, like I can't really picture that for myself. That doesn't seem so scary." But if you could say, "Hey, I had this dream last night, and I made it in the metaverse. Put this on,"
Bruh.
and then you're just like, "Oh, fuck!"
Bro, what? Like that's that. Like, come on, people just need to be like, it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're sort of reaching the people and getting your message across. It don't matter. It could be any shape or form. It's not like art is the only thing that I'm doing. I'm sitting most of my life, I'm just sitting on the street, and people just look at me and try and talk to me, and I'm helping them throughout the day.
Yeah.
It's not, so people have to understand, it's like, if there's more than one way to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Well, Arthur, thank you so much for your time. Can you plug everything again, like Instagram, website, wherever people can check you out, and it'll all be linked to the podcast wherever you're listening to.
Arthur Midianga, my IG, you can follow me at BotCrisp, B-O-T, crisp with an S at the end. My website, last name, midianga.com. Holla at me, yo. I got this show in Kansas City right now. So I guess if you out there in the Midwest, check it out. It's from now until Habitat Contemporary Gallery. It's from now until mid-February. So you can holla at me. I got some big things coming up. Some big things coming up.
Anything you can announce in New York, Northeast area, or nothing certain yet?
I got some big coming up, but I ain't gonna announce it.
Follow the website.
But yeah. Just follow me on my IG, my website. Big thing coming up, baby. I'm just telling y'all. I'm just saying y'all gotta tap in.
You heard, stay tuned, tap in. We're in the metaverse or not, or who knows. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. See you guys next time.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this is a quick reminder to check out Auxoro Premium, the best deal in premium podcasting. On Auxoro Premium, you gain access to bonus episodes, the unlicensed therapy series, the ability to submit topic suggestions for the podcast, exclusive Ask Me Anything episodes, and the entire premium catalog for only $5 per month. Go to auxoro.supercast.com, that's AUXORO.supercast.com, to join the premium gang today.